Oh, hi everyone. I'm Joanna Strassburg. This is the 401. Thank you so much for joining us. Um, just bear with us for a moment as everybody is still joining in with their cameras and their microphones. But thank you for joining us. Today is Sunday, April the 14th. We are on I guess we call it Titanic weekend. It's the 112th anniversary of the impact with the iceberg and the sinking. The purpose of this show tonight is to just commemorate the anniversary of those who perished that night and the lives that were forever changed. So we are doing what we call a countdown to collision. We are using Samuel Halpern's chronology of events with references and notes, and we certainly do appreciate him letting us use that. But it's kind of a minute by minute kind of countdown from when Titanic left to just the very final moments when Titanic sank. So I'm just going to count down right now to when Titanic collided with the iceberg. There were just some interesting things that took place. Of course, there were lots of things that took place from the time Titanic left Southampton until now, actually. And Steve Hall was kind enough to put together this really interesting and intricate timeline between New York time, which is time, and Australian time, and Greenwich Mean Time, and what we call Titanic time. So I'll let him kind of explain that to you guys later. But I want to welcome Bruce Beveridge, Steve Hall, Joshua Noble, Michael Goldsmith, and Thorsten Totzke to the show. My co-host, Dan Curley, is kind of feeling under the weather, so he couldn't join us. So we want to send some well wishes to him. But welcome, everyone.
Hi, Joanna.
Hey.
Hi.
So we'll just get right
Can you hear
to
me
it.
okay?
Yeah, we hear you. Well, there's a little bit of an echo, but it's not bad. But
Really?
we're gonna welcome everybody.
How about now? How about the echo now?
It's better. Better. We just lost Michael. Hopefully he'll be back. But before we get into too much introduction, and before we get too far behind in the slideshow, because there's a little bit of time break between the first slide and the second one, I'm gonna go pull that up real quick and catch up. And then we'll take a little break in between the first and second slides, and then get to know everyone real quick. So you guys saw this already. All right, go to the next slide. Hello. Always having trouble with this. So I know Michael's trying to get in, it won't let him in. There we go. All right. All right, I hope you hear two bells here. I can't hear anything. I don't know why. But at 9:00 p.m. Titanic time, it was two bells. Bells are rung every half hour on the watch, with 8 bells being the end of the 4th hour watch. 2 bells indicates the end of the second half hour of the watch. So that's really all that was happening there at 9:00 Titanic time on April the 14th. So our next check-in on Samuel's timeline is 9:25 p.m. Titanic time, which would be 8:23 our time. So I'll stop this and we'll check back in for the next item on our list at 8:23. Did you guys hear the bells?
Yes.
I did.
Yes.
The bells.
Okay, so that bell on the slideshow was actually a picture of the recovered crow's nest bell. I talked to Steve and we were trying to figure out, I asked him, I said, which bell did they ring for the watch? And he said it was a bell on the bridge. And I was like, well, what happened to that bell?
Crow's nest.
What do you have, Steve?
Yeah,
Anything?
there was a bell on the front and a bell in the crow's nest. And it was a responsibility for the lookouts when the Bruce to ring the time.
They would have rang the bell that was on the front of the wheelhouse,
Like that, yeah, the one in front of the wheel. Yeah,
the one in
that's
front of
it.
the navigating bridge.
Yeah.
How
That's
many
right.
So
bells
it was
total
a
were
bell on the
aboard?
front
Smaller
of
than
the
crow's nest.
navigating bridge that would have been rung. The only bell I could find anywhere that has been recovered was the crow's nest bell. I have a ton of books and stuff on artifacts and stuff. I've looked online. As far as I can tell, that's the only bell that has been brought up. If I'm wrong, somebody please correct me because I couldn't find anything else.
It's not much
I
information.
think you're right. I've not heard
Any
of
of you
any other bell
artifact
brought up.
experts out there, please just let me know because I couldn't find anything.
I know only where the Olympic bridge bell is.
The
She's-
Olympic switch bell.
she-
Oh my
she-
goodness, don't get Steve
the-
started. Stephen first started on the Olympic and Titanic switch.
The Olympics bell is here in Germany by a friend of mine.
Oh, okay. So which one? The bridge bell?
Yeah.
Okay.
For some reason, I thought I could be wrong, but I thought I saw where the THS had an Olympic bell as well. I know they
Okay.
have the Mackie Bennett bell, but I think they had an Olympic one.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. I've only seen the bell, which was the one which was recovered, and I saw it in a book, which I only found the other day, which was in a cupboard, and it's about, I don't know, 20 years old. I can't say the whole bell. There's nothing on it. And that's the one from the crow's nest.
Okay. Michael, how are you doing today?
Crow's nest. And the bell that's from the Olympic, does it say Olympic? Is it stamped on there by any chance?
I don't recall.
I don't think they had the names on them, Bruce, to be honest. I think they were generic. I don't think the name, I don't remember seeing whether the name was on them or not. I don't see a point of putting the name on it, really, But no,
That was the crow's nest bell that they raised. The one that you're speaking about. It doesn't have any name on it at all, which it should.
Yeah. Yeah. But the one on front of the bridge, I don't know where. I don't know. I don't think they found it anyway. So it has to be out there somewhere because I mean, there's not much
left of that.
Well, there's not much of the bridge left anyway, is there? Really? I mean, it was just all washed away. So, I mean, all the bits and pieces they could be anywhere.
Well, that whole thing was crushed, so I think a lot of that stuff would have ended up in the silt. Probably ended up somewhere on the B deck bowl promenade or something like that.
Yeah, it was only made out of wood anyway.
I would assume.
Yeah, well, it was just made out of wood. Yeah.
Or with the Magellan scans, that they could find more bells in the debris field.
That's true. That's true. So there's always hope. So who would have been responsible for ringing the bell, do you guys think?
Well, they would have had a quartermaster do that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what I believe. I could be wrong, but it's possible that the officers or the watch did it.
I'm not too sure really who did it. To be honest, I got no idea, and I got no idea really who was keeping the time. Somebody must have been keeping the time. There was a clock in the wheelhouse. So I didn't say, look, it's this time or that time, whatever. It's ring a couple of bells because I'm just looking at what Sam's got on his list here. That's all. So I mean, it's quite detailed. I'm just looking at the time. So nine. It's coming up to 9:25 on the ship, is it? I'm just looking at the time. So
one of you guys needs to mute your if you have the show on, you need to mute it. One of you guys needs to I'm hearing myself twice. If you're watching, I have to hear myself. So I want to say hi to everybody who's watching: Bob Custer, Dave Gardner, Steve Hurst, Chris Hood. Thank you guys for watching. We certainly do appreciate it. It looks like Cody Reinhardt's watching. Stefan's watching. Hey, Stefan.
Hey, Michael, I can hear you.
So I really appreciate you guys watching. Michael, how are you doing over there? Is everything working okay?
Michael. Good to see you there.
Can you hear us? Can you? You still connecting?
No, that's,
Yeah.
Yep, we can hear you. I heard you a
Can I
little
ask
bit.
a question? Joanna, did you say you put up there Sam Roberts timeline to somewhere where it's accessible by us? I like to see it on the side here.
If you click on chat down there at the bottom of your Zoom, there should be a little like box that says chat. If you click on that,
Uh,
then there's a link to the timeline. And I think we're like 1, 2, 3, we're like 10 pages in, I think, at the bottom where it says 14 April and it says 1923. We're on the very bottom line.
yeah, no, it's not showing
Hi,
up in
Cody.
mine. I
Cody's
can't see it.
watching. Dave Gardner says, Joshua, love your Duncher cap.
Thanks.
Stefan says, hello, fellow shipmates. So we're coming up on our next entry on the timeline, which would be 9:25 p.m. ship time. So I'm going
yes.
to pull up our presentation again real quick. Work. It's probably the bell ringing again.
Can't hear the bell.
Yeah,
Well, it's
might
supposed to
fall off.
advance to the next slide. There we go. All right, so 9:25, Captain Smith to Second Officer Lightoller. If it
Yep.
becomes at all doubtful, let me know at once. I'll be just inside. And Captain
Yeah.
Smith leaves to the bridge to go inside, leaves the bridge to go inside to his quarters.
Yeah.
So Captain Smith's like, I'm out. Let me know if you need anything. So
Yeah, well, he didn't. It wasn't far to go. I mean, I think it'd only been half an hour before he was having some lunch or something, wasn't he? Or some dinner or something down the a la carte restaurant or something, I think.
Yeah,
Then
the
he-
Wagners had him as the guest of honor with
That's
like
right,
creme
yeah.
de la
Mhm,
creme
mhm.
of the first class passengers.
Mhm.
And so there was a lot of accounts of that night.
Yeah.
And then he went up to the bridge after that, and I mean the general assumption is that he went to sleep, but he came out pretty quickly after they struck the iceberg. I kind of feel like he wasn't asleep.
Mhm.
No.
I mean, 9:30. I mean, 9:25 is still fairly early.
Yeah.
I would have to assume he wasn't just going to bed at 9:30.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's not a young man anymore, I suppose. Just had a good meal. So, I mean, he'd been down there chatting and whatever. He got some good officers on the bridge. I mean, he's well aware of the situation and what's ahead, what he's already read. And then he goes forward. I don't know whether he dropped into the Marconi room on his way back. I'm not too sure, really. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. And so it's just that one critical message that just didn't seem to get there anyway. But I mean, he got up there and everything seemed to be nice and calm. Lightoller up there doing his job. So around this time, it's starting to get pretty cold up there. I think, did they ask about putting the heaters on or something like that? Ask the carpenter to come up, turn the heaters on in the wheelhouse or something like that. And I mean, you turn the heaters on, it would have turned them on in the officers' quarters and everywhere else where it was. So, but you just imagine, that he's up there. I don't think he was overly honest to about, what was happening. I mean, there was no moon. It was, it was pretty pitch black. Came up and was just talking to Lightoller and just talking about the conditions. So,
I mean, I'm just looking back, throughout the day, prior to this, where we started our timeline. But looking back at the day ahead, they received, several ice warnings. So he knew that other ships were encountering ice, and they were, letting the Titanic know that they had seen ice. And it looks like the last update was at 3 o'clock from the fireman John Thompson about how fast they were going, and it looks like it was estimated that they were going about 22.3 knots as of 3 p.m.
Let me. Can I just interrupt?
Sure.
Captains are required to stay on the bridge and pilot his waters, or if there's going to be anything, as he would put it, doubtful. And Smith did not go into his bedroom. In fact, he probably went into his chart room, and that's why they put bunks in the chart rooms. And he had his own chart room right off of his quarters. And I doubt he was sleeping. He may have went to the John for all we know, but he went in there to freshen up. But I think he planned on staying. He had to be available for the bridge, so he probably would have taken a cat nap on his cot in the chart room. I doubt he went to sleep by this time. It's just like on the Californian. That captain was asleep in his chart room, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When they went and got him up. Am I correct about that?
Yeah.
That's what they've said.
He was
that he was in the
asleep in the chart room, although they were surrounded by ice on the California.
Yeah, right. Well, he was kind of down for the night.
Yeah.
Was he in the chart room? I forgot. But they put a bunk. There was a bunk in the chart room for that purpose. So if it was a foggy weather or any kind of bad weather or anything that may cause damage to the ship, the captains were required to stay on the bridge. So he wouldn't have gotten out of his uniform.
And there was some kind of haze, and historians are still trying to look at that. I know George Behe's been doing some great work on that. But there was some kind of haze that night just above the waterline, which may have created an interesting
that haze
situation.
was caused by reversal of, I forget what it's called, but in normal times when you look at a desert, you see the reflection of the sky, right? With what we call mirage. Well, the night the Titanic struck the iceberg, that was reversed, and that caused a haze or whatever you want to call it.
I've heard of that before, the mirage theory, where it made the horizon look reversed or different, at least. Like it made the stars look like they were below the horizon. I mean, I'm sure that could look really confusing.
Well, it was a bit hard. I mean, the sea's dead calm. And whether there were any other icebergs, growlers, or anything around, I think George B might have touched on the perhaps the passengers might have seen one or something like that.
Yes.
But up on the bridge there, I mean, it all looked pretty clear. There's no need to slow down. Captain Smith's excused himself. He's gone into his little chart room, not the one behind the wheelhouse, but he's gone in there and lied down. And as Bruce said, he might have gone in there and was reading a little while, but I mean, certainly after the collision, didn't take him very long to come out. And whether he came out because he heard the three bells, or whether he came out because he felt the bump, whatever it was, it wasn't that far away, but realistically, he didn't think there was any danger to the ship, really. It was in good hands. I think who was the officer? Lightoller, was it? So he had a lot of experience. So, and I think at this time too that the Californian hadn't stopped yet either. So it was still steaming along. So, I mean, it was in advance. So, Captain Lord, I mean, I don't know whether he would have been on the bridge or not. On the Californian, I suppose he may well have. It was all exposed. I mean, who's going to stand on an open bridge? It's freezing cold. He was probably down there, and he had his officer of the watch up the top there having a look at it, but it just deteriorated so quickly. He just thought to himself, well, we're just going to stop the ship. So, but that doesn't happen for about another 50 minutes or something. I think it's just having a look at the timeline or something like that. So,
I remember reading that. So we're up to the point where we're ready to go to the next slide. If it'll let me. There we go. So 9:30 p.m. Titanic time. Do you guys hear the bells?
Yes.
Okay, good. I don't know why I can't hear them. So 3 bells. Second Officer Lightoller tells 6th Officer Moody to ring up the crow's nest and tell the lookouts to keep a sharp lookout for ice, particularly small ice and growlers. Quartermaster Hitchens is told to find the carpenter and tell him to look after the fresh water as it might freeze. I find that interesting. So
yeah. Well,
so where was the fresh water kept?
Yeah.
It was kept in the tanks in the double bottom. Well, that depends on what freshwater they're referring to. The potable water was kept along the side of the hull, towards towards the back, right around the fourth funnel, in that area. There was a potable water, but the fresh water for like the boiler makeup water was kept in the double bottom tanks. So that's what he was. He was probably checking the fresh water, the potable water, I would assume.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So Michael, your family was on the Titanic that night. What can you tell us about what you know that they were doing about this time? Did they know anything? I mean, what were they doing? Were they getting ready for bed? Were they, what were they doing?
At 9:30 p.m., that was about an hour and a half after they put my grandpa to bed. So he went to bed about 8 o'clock that night. He, of course, was 9 years old, and he known as Little Frankie to most of the world that know his story. At 9:30 on the ship would be about 8:30 Eastern time.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a chart of the timeline for here. And it has Titanic time, GMT, Greenwich Mean Time, US time, and Brisbane, Australia time. But they were in bed down third class, and they were birthed in this area right here. I know I've told you before, but the other down, I don't know. They were on D deck, which is right here, at the beginning of third and end of second. So the doctor's stateroom was right across the hall from them.
So your family, the whole family was aboard with your family, and they were birthed aft to your father. Was it your father you're talking about, or your grandfather? Michael, was that your grandfather or your father?
My great-grandfather, my great-grandmother were on the ship.
Ah.
So it'd be Frank Sr., William, Frank John William. And they were two other people that were in their party were Alfred Rush and Thomas Theobald.
Mm-hmm. So about this time, people back then didn't stay awake real late. I mean, they had a light dinner, a light supper, I should say, and they didn't stay. Of course, it depends, but most of them, would start to retire around time, I would assume. Is that what you said? That they probably were preparing for bed, weren't they?
Yeah, my family was already in bed as far as I know. I know my grandfather was. His parents, where they were not, I don't know. But I'm pretty sure they were also in bed. Because there wasn't a lot for married people to do, really. It's not like the cruise ships of the day or the Queen Mary 2, where there's activity to go on into the night.
Your mic is
it was a different story back then, Yeah, it's a shame that the audio is so bad because I want to hear what he says, but I can make it out.
Yeah. It's breaking out a little bit.
We see it in the Cameron movie.
Yeah.
In the Titanic movie, we've seen all the third class, dancing around the hold, playing their violins. And they did that. That's true. Mm-hmm. But not all of them. I mean, a lot of these people were farmers, So, they were going to bed. Mm-hmm. I find it kind of amusing because Cameron did it very well. I mean, he there was a good scene, and they did actually put the tops on the holds like that. In a lot of cases, they kept the air. They put the grates on there to keep the airflow through. But I believe in that area, they actually did put the boards on top of the hatch combings. That's what they're dancing on, by the way. What Leonardo or Kate and Jack are dancing on, they're on top of a hold combing. That's what that planking is. I don't know if anybody knew that.
I thought it was a table.
No, it's a hold combing. It's the wooden covers over the top of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I read that third class public areas did close at a certain point. First class, especially in the smoke room, they kept them up a little later. They allowed them to stay up a little later. Second class, I think they also closed them a little earlier before the collision.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
Turn the bar on.
No, we're still at 9 o'clock, right?
Yeah, the last entry that we were at was 9:30 with the 3 bells.
I'm pretty sure they chased everyone off, third class out by about 9 or 9:30. Or first class was, depending on where you went, it was 10 o'clock, and then the smoke room was 11 o'clock. If I'm correct, it's been from memory now.
I do have to share one more slide real quick before we get too far ahead. Let's see. Let's do this one real quick. All right, so this one is 9:32. Actually went past it a little bit. Titanic, MGY to Cape Race, MCE from America, DDR. Hydrographic Office, Washington. America passed 2 large icebergs, 41.27 N, 50.8 W on the 14th of April. And so I just put a little picture of the America there. But I think that's interesting to note that came through at 9:32 p.m. Anyway, sorry to
They were
interrupt you.
given warning that there was large icebergs found, but these ships always sailed at full speed.
Mhm.
And when you get a ship the size of Titanic, they depend on the lookout to sight anything in the way that may cause damage to the ship. So they were given these warnings. Okay, fine, and we'll keep a lookout for them. Of course, it doesn't help when the lookouts don't see the icebergs. That's the issue. But they wouldn't have down yet. But these ships are designed to go through ice. Believe it or not, when they go into the New York Harbor in the wintertime, their bows are cutting through ice in some instances. I don't know if you knew that. It's what a true ocean liner consists of. That's why they have those very sharp sounds. In any case, yeah.
Yeah, with the Masaba messages, they were semi-ignored, partially because Harold Bride was already in bed. They'd already been up all night to get the Marconi room fixed, the Marconi apparatus fixed. And then correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the Masaba messages did not include a specific message that said it was supposed to be delivered to the captain.
That's right. Yeah.
They failed to include that, and so given that and the fact they'd already received ice warnings, Phillips decided not to pass it on to the bridge.
Yeah. Well, that was one of those things with the Marconi company. They were supposed to pass along any kind of things that were navigational exigent like that to the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
But remember, there was only a couple of years prior to this, there was no Marconi, and it was kind of it was a new thing. It was a luxury. It was just kind of a way of making money and bringing passengers aboard. But they didn't give the importance to the navigational aid thing quite yet, and they should have. It doesn't, but they were supposed to, but they didn't. But these guys were inundated with messages. They were, popping things on the nail, as you always hear about. But if you think about it like this, Captain Smith and the rest of those officers, only 10 years before, didn't have a Marconi. A lot of these guys, these sailors in general, were trained on tall ships. They didn't have any of that shit when they were on the tall ships. So they didn't think they needed it now either,
Yes.
Of course, the tall ships were doing 23 knots, and 882 feet long, but
Yeah, but I agree, Bruce. And the thing is that the flight told he was saying just keep a good lookout for everything. He could have said to somebody, go down to the Marconi room, see if there's any updates, any more ice warnings. No one said
he didn't.
Yeah, well, you could have walked down. It would only take you 3 minutes. You got anything for the bridge? Any updates on ice ahead of the ship or anything? So I don't think that happened. I suppose if somebody went down there, they would have found that message.
Yeah, right. Well, he did because they weren't depending on it. They're just like the Californian. I mean, he didn't think about using the Marconi. The Marconi operator went to bed because these guys are all trained to do signaling with the lamps and rockets. They don't even think about the Marconi thing. It was a luxury, And it wasn't until they figured out how important it was.
Yeah, it was primarily for the passenger traffic, for the passengers to send messages back and forth. But it wasn't really until the RMS Republic in 1909 that it was really seen as a more emergent device for signaling with disasters and stuff like that.
No.
But yeah, I also question, had those two messages, the Masaba and the Californian, gotten to the bridge, would that have changed them how they were sailing at all?
I think maybe they would. Maybe they would.
Maybe, maybe not. I don't know, because it seemed like they
Yeah.
were taking plenty of precautions, traveling a more
Yeah.
southerly route, having extra lookouts and all that other stuff.
Yeah, just depends. It just depends, I think, too, Josh, you know, who the officer was on the bridge and what their attitude was to the situation. Lightoller was up there, and then I think he was replaced by Murdoch. So I just don't think they were thinking that there were any problems. They just thought they'd gone far enough south to miss anything, and they thought with good eyes, I mean, you'll see well enough in advance, and we can miss it.
Yes.
So
That's correct.
there probably was ice banging off the ship down the side there. There probably would have been ice around the place. But you know, we don't know because I mean, you know, half the guys, you know, the officers and that, they didn't make it. So, and you don't get the full story. You know what they were doing, what they weren't doing. So, but the lookouts hadn't reported seeing any icebergs or anything. I don't recall. George covered all that, but you know, if there was one which they ran into, there had to have been more than one, because Rostrom said the next day they appeared to be all over the place. So, and he'd arrived where the ship had gone down, and he looked around. He said they're in front of him, behind him, they're all over the place. But the lookouts were only looking at what was in front of the ship. That's all. They weren't looking at, you know, what's over on the port or the starboard side. They're only just sort of looking what's in front of it. I mean, that's their job, you know.
What they could see. You know, it's very dark out there. That ship didn't illuminate very much from the outside, so it wasn't a lot of light either. They were depending on that reflection off the water or whatever it was, or the water hitting the base. They were depending on that. If it doesn't happen, then what? You know, it's a freak accident and a freak night is what it's really what it is.
Yeah, it would have been. It would have been a freak night. But if there'd been ice around, growler ice, small ice, little bits and pieces, still would have been banging off the side of the ship. You still would have heard it.
Yeah.
You know, you would have heard bang, 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 and you know, and you would have gone over and just had a look over the side there, and you probably couldn't see, but what you could have seen was a little bit further along the ship there, where all the lights are coming out of all the ports. So you probably could have seen the small pieces of ice going past. You know,
it seems to me, based on the photographs and how things were, it seems to me like they were pretty much at the edge of that ice field, because you have some photos from the Carpathia showing field ice, and you have survivor accounts showing field ice.
Yes.
Other photos showing no ice. And it does make me wonder if where the Titanic sank was almost to a place where it was the edge of that field ice.
I think that's right, Josh. Right. I think Titanic was just outside of that area where you're going to end up with all that ice. And by the time Carpathia turned up and took a few photos, it was several hours later on. So, I mean, it all drifted over a little bit more anyway.
And I read something the other day that there was that big hunk of ice that was only 7 miles ahead of Titanic. So had she not hit the big iceberg like she did, if she would have kept going without striking it, she still would have hit ice anyways.
Yeah.
But she would have struck it in the bow.
Yeah.
There was like a 52 square mile piece of ice that was dead ahead of her at a distance of about 7 miles, from what I understand.
Yeah. So
I hate to do this, but we've got one more thing to get to, and then y'all can resume. This is
just to stick up for these lookouts, because we always forget about the human factor of this, and we can't prove any of this. But I want you to think about this. If you got two guys up there in this crow's nest, below freezing, looking forward with a 16-knot headwind, about 16 knots. That's what I think I remember correctly, is about what it was coming at the ship as you were going forward. Imagine what that was like. Freezing air in your eyeballs.
I spent 11 years in Italy, and 3 of those were in Germany in the snow, so I know exactly what that is like. It's cold.
So the next thing on our timeline was 9:45 Titanic time. Quartermaster Hitchens calls upon First Officer, and I spelled that wrong because I was in a hurry. First Officer Murdoch, informing him of it is 1 bell, 9:45, and he is due on the deck in 15 minutes. Now this I don't understand. So he was just telling First Officer Murdoch that he had 15 minutes until it was going to be his watch. Is that all this is saying here?
Yeah, that's what
I'm
it's
not
saying.
sure what that means.
So it sounds like 15
he was
minutes to
just gonna
showtime.
say,
It sounds like it's 15 minutes to
Just like in the
showtime.
military, when you
Yeah.
change over the watch, you always let the person know, hey, are you awake? Are you ready to go? You got about 15 minutes to get ready.
But the
You know,
thing
you
is, though,
give them
it
a heads up.
wasn't 1 bell. The next watch was actually 4 bells. It was going to be 4 bells at 10 p.m. So I'm not sure I understand what this is trying to say. Telling me it is 1 bell. Oh, okay. Okay, so he's telling him that it's 1 bell, meaning 15 minutes. Okay, I get it.
Right.
He's reminding
There's
him of the
4
time,
bells
making
per
sure that
hour.
Murdoch gets there on time.
Okay, so he's telling Murdoch basically like, all right, you've got 15 minutes till your watch.
Yep.
Okay, I understand now. I need to go back and fix that. Y'all just don't know. I was like working on this up until like the very last minute. It's been a busy week. Okay. All right, so I don't have to break back in until the next entry is at 9:52. I'm gonna stop that. Okay, carry on. Carry on, carry on. This is really interesting. It's interesting to hear y'all's different points of views as to what's going on and just kind of tying everything together. It's there was just so much going on, and I agree about the human factor because I don't like being cold. Somebody still has their volume up on what they're watching because again, I'm hearing myself again. But it is a human factor. I don't like being cold. Like last night, we were packing up to go. My husband and I, well, I just sat there while he did the DJing. But at the end, I helped him like tear everything down, pack everything up, and they had the door open, and it was really cold. And I just cannot even imagine how cold these guys were. I'm sure they were used to it, but I was freezing last night. I can't imagine what they were exposed to, in the freezing cold, looking for icebergs, up in the crow's nest. I'm sure it was not an easy job. Um, I'm sure that's what they got paid for and everything, but still, you know, it's hard to lay blame on just people who are people.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. The
it's
interesting thing with it, Joe, it's just there's 2 of them up there, and there's nothing else to do up there but look ahead. And they were probably just talking. And one of them was probably looking ahead, and the other one might have sort of just ducked down a little bit to try and stay a little bit more. You really don't know what they were doing up there, what they were seeing. They were certainly doing their job, but it would have been freezing cold. You could imagine their eyes were watery. I don't know, wearing a cap, I don't know, they might have been wearing balaclava. I don't know. But I would imagine I wouldn't want to be up there. And I wouldn't want to be outside on the deck anywhere either, because there's just not enough that you could wear warm. So, I just find it interesting that if you put yourself in the position of those guys up there, I mean, they've just been simply told, keep an eye out for that, and that's their job. And I don't think they're too fussed about anything else.
And another thing I hear so much, from especially like from my students and stuff, hey, why didn't they use binoculars? I'm like, have you ever tried to use binoculars at night? Why don't you get some and go out in the middle of the night and try to look for something? I'm like, binoculars are good during the day, but if you're, using them at night, what are you gonna see? Just more night.
Yeah, the binocular thing has always been a pet peeve of mine, because you have to see something first before you aim the binoculars at it to identify it. But the other thing is they didn't give lookouts binoculars. They don't give them because the lookouts, well, it is not their job. Their job is to see something with their eyes. They phone down or they call down to the bridge, and the officer of the watch will then use his binoculars to identify it. Most of the time, the lookouts during the daylight, if they see a ship going by with some signal flags, they would call down to the bridge and say, we have a ship off the port bow, and then whatever. And then the officer or the watch would look. Maybe they would show some signal flags, whatever it might be. But you don't give binoculars or lookouts. But at night, they're completely useless unless you have something to point them at.
Yeah. I tell everybody that said that, they're like, oh, well, the Titanic sank because the binoculars were locked in a locker or something, and somebody left with the key. And I'm like, no, that's no.
But that whole thing, when the David Blair collection came up for auction, I talked to Aldridge and some of the London Times, whatever it was, these papers called me, and I said, wait a minute. First of all, David Blair's binoculars were given to him by his family. Says it right in the testimony. They were his personal set. Ocean liners don't go at any era, don't go to sea with one set of binoculars. There was usually a teak box that has a company issue binoculars for each officer. But he used his own. Those lookouts from the trip from Belfast to Southampton, they said, can we use your binoculars? Well, there's nobody on board. So these guys want to use the binoculars and they want to sight up stuff. He goes, here, you can use mine. When you're done with them, put them back in my locker in my room.
Exactly. I do have some White Star Line binoculars, similar to what you're saying, and they are SS Runic, and it says first officer.
Okay, let's zoom in on you. All right, say something, Josh. It'll point to you.
Yeah, it was just.
Yeah, it's cool. In fact, if you want to give those to me as Christmas is coming up, my friend.
Hold on. Let me get it back to you. All right, hold them up one more time, Josh. All right, hold them up one more time so we can see them.
So these are
those
White
are
Star
so
Line
cool.
binoculars, but it says first officer and SS Runic. More to Bruce's point, that these were assigned for specific people.
That's really cool.
Yeah, well, yeah.
All right, so we're doing this more time. So our next thing on that time.
Okay, go ahead.
Hold on. All right, we don't want to get too hard. All right, 9:52 p.m. A wireless message transmitted from the Mesaba to Titanic, and all eastbound ships. Ice report in latitude 42N to 41 degrees 25 and longitude 49 west to longitude 50-30 west. Saw much heavy packed ice and great number of large icebergs. Also field ice, weather good and clear. So that was 9:52 Titanic time. And I don't have to bust in again until almost 10 o'clock. Like a few more minutes. But that's it. So another ice warning.
Yeah, they got an ice warning. They say, okay, fine. We'll see ice. If there ain't anything big enough to sink the ship or to cause damage, we'll either slow down or go around it. Otherwise, go ahead.
So let's see. All right. What were we talking about? I apologize for having to break in there. You guys are having a good conversation. We were talking about like binoculars and stuff and standard issue stuff. So yeah, the theory of the binoculars sinking Titanic is just a theory.
Not even a theory, it's a joke. There's a landlubbers. That is a typical landlubbers story concoction. Just like the Titanic's engines were put in reverse in 37 seconds. No, this is not Grandpa's Chris Craft. They do not go in reverse. It doesn't have a transmission.
I've heard a lot of things, recently. I'm like, Lusitania was Titanic's sister ship and stuff like that. And I'm like, no, I know it wasn't.
Sister ship's thrown around very loosely.
I know. I'm like, no.
But I'm going to tell you a little story. You're going to like this. But one of the issues we have, you give lookouts binoculars in the daylight. And I know this because I read it in a period book. Make this up. But commonly, the third-class promenades are located right near where the crow's nest is at. So if you give lookouts of binoculars in the daylight, what are they going to be doing instead of looking out where they're supposed to? They'll be looking down at the ladies with their binoculars. That came right out of a book. I'm just saying.
Looking down at two passengers making out on the well deck.
No, I'm serious. I mean,
Oh, well. Yeah, well,
I know you are.
somebody's
I know you are. It's
echoing
just
back. It's not
perfect
me.
for bringing in the movie.
Yeah, they watch Rose and Jack after they having sex.
well,
Look at this.
I-
They had a problem with this
They weren't
back
doing
then.
it. They weren't doing it
And
right.
the
Right.
U.S. Senate actually, there was a problem with the abuse of third-class passengers at this time. And the cheaper line was really bad. The White Star Line and Cunard, not as much. And there was a whole U.S. Senate investigation into this. And I read the full report. We're talking about stuff that you don't want to hear about. But all the little staircases going up, like you see Rosburn posing next to the staircase, you can tell whether that staircase is in a crew area or passenger area. If this is a passenger area, it had to be locked out in the back because people would get underneath the stairs and look up the ladies' dresses. That's a fact. That was actually in the Board of Trade regulations. So there was a problem with that. You don't get lookouts binoculars in the daylight or any other time because they will not do their job. They will. I hate to use the word "f off," but that's what they'll do.
It's interesting.
That was depicted in, what was it? The one horrible Titanic miniseries, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the '96 one.
Yes. But they won't,
And you couldn't keep.
they don't show that on TV anymore. But
Oh, could that
But
also be why more of the men were quartered in third class towards the bow, and the women
but they
were more
would keep
towards
them
the stern?
separated, wouldn't they, in third class? And
Oh yeah.
so it wasn't just
The absolute worst seats in the whole ship are at the bow. That's where most of the vibration hitting the waves was most uncomfortable area. That's where all the true steerage went. Where the third class were aft, where the families and women were. And they kept them separated because of the issue with abuse. And you also find too that male stewards who were not assigned to third class were not allowed in third class because they would abuse third class women too, or other whatever it is. But there was all
My
kinds of
family
stories.
steward was a male steward.
what do you think?
What's that?
I said my family steward was a male steward,
You had
and
a
they were
family there.
they were
But he
indeed
was assigned
in
to
the
it,
rear
though.
of the ship.
Mhm.
That's true. They were at the very top of third class. So
All right, so it's time to move on to the next slide.
Mhm.
It's amazing how fast this is going by. I've lost my notes. There it is. Okay. So here we go. Next slide. All right, so Titanic time, it's 10 o'clock. I think. And it's 4 bells. Did you guys hear the 4 bells?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. First Officer Murdoch replaces Second Officer Lightoller as officer of the watch. Lookouts Fleet and Lee replace Lookouts Jewel and Simmons up in the nest. Quartermaster Hitchens takes the wheel, replacing Quartermaster Oliver, having just taken the log reading by phone from Quartermaster Rowe on the afterbridge. Oliver takes Quartermaster's standby position. Ship traveled 45 nautical miles through the water since 8 p.m., averaging 22.5 knots. Passenger Henry Stingle notices the engines were running faster than any other time during the trip. So that's what was going on at 10 o'clock.
Well, are they running faster than any other time? I don't know.
I guess it just sounded like that. I think it probably just may have just sounded like that because everything was kind of quiet. Things were starting to settle down.
Yeah.
People were starting to go to bed. Maybe he just noticed it. I mean, what do you guys think?
It should also be pointed out that if you read Stengel's account of Boat 1, he kind of tends to not exactly lie, but over exaggerate.
Yeah. There's a lot of that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you even no, Joanna, you know what they're referring to when they say that they were reading the log by phone. You know what they're talking about, right?
Mhm. Was it the ship's phone? Were there a few phones
That
on
was
the
at ship speed.
Mhm.
No, he's reading the log, the ship's speed from the docking bridge. I think
Okay.
every 4 hours they had to do ship's log. They're talking about the Neptune's patent log, the ship's speed. And then, of course, you got one quartermaster who was a standby man that kind of did running around. You got a quartermaster at the wheel, you got one in the after bridge, and you got one kind of in the center. I think he also handled any kind of with standard compass over there between the second and third funnel. That's what that is. I'm just kind of
Okay.
translating all that.
Well, there was some of it I didn't understand, so that's good.
Yeah.
Some of the ship lingo I get, and some of it I'm just never sure. All right, so we do have a few comments coming through. Let's see. Terry Bay is watching, and she said, you mentioned the California message right before the Titanic hit the iceberg. I'm so haunted by that exchange. Seriously, all because Cyril Evans didn't write message. And then John Lupo is watching, and he says the whole Ismay pressuring the crew to push the Titanic as fast as possible is another legend.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's true.
he's kind of villainized in a lot of dramatizations and movies. And I don't think that maybe he was quite the villain that we think he was.
He was a businessman.
He wasn't.
Yeah, he was a businessman. He was there to kind of like, I think, oversee and just, kind of enjoy the ride. And, just, I don't think that he was trying to really, push things. I don't know. I mean, that's just kind of the impression I got.
He
and
was
then-
Another
asked
another
a
point about
question.
Mr. Ismay is he had no friends on either side of the Atlantic
Mhm.
because he was seen as an upstart.
Yeah, he was an
And
introvert.
in reality, he was actually running White Star into the ground until IMM picked and bolstered them up.
Yeah, but I mean, what the question is, I suppose, was Esme influencing, the captain to, push it along a little faster, or did he go down and see the chief engineer, or did he approach Lightoller or Murdoch or any of them at any time? He could have walked up onto the bridge at any time. I don't think anyone would have said anything to him. But then really, he probably wouldn't have gone up on the bridge. He probably would have had a runner or something. He would have probably had somebody come down and just update him up until 11 or 12 o'clock how fast it was going. But I mean, it really wasn't going to go much faster, than what it already was doing. It wasn't what the tide was, or anything like that. It was not affected by wind or anything. And even flat out the Titanic, I think that the quickest it went was nearly 24 knots coming down from Belfast to Southampton. And but it had hardly any coal on it, and there was nobody on it. The ship was probably capable going flat out, probably given those circumstances, regardless of whether those extra boilers had been lit or not. You'd be lucky to get 23 knots, and you wouldn't have even noticed 23 and a quarter, 20. You wouldn't notice anything. But wasn't it Beasley who said that his mattress was vibrating a little bit more than normal? Lawrence Beasley?
I think so.
He was saying that his mattress was vibrating a little bit more than necessary. But when you get these are new engines, and they're not used to running at that speed, they're still breaking these things in. And it's like any car, there's a sweet spot for the engine. The engineers is going to know where it is. Is it 22.5? Is it 23? They're probably just trying to look for the sweet spot. But not only that, they probably perhaps increase the RPM on it just so, just change it around a little bit.
Beasley was also in second class, and I believe that area was more optimal for feeling the vibrations. A lot of the passengers described the vibrations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When did they plan on putting the last bank of boilers on? Wasn't that supposed to be?
Next
Did
day.
they have all the boilers going at this time? They did, right?
No, they were
they
good. They were going to light off
I
the
don't
last
think-
boiler room.
boiler.
Yeah, I don't think one had been
following day.
lit yet. And now I have heard a belief that they lit it after the iceberg was struck to keep the power going and things going as long as possible. But I don't feel like they had enough time to really get enough steam in there.
Well, it took several hours, I think, to get up the temperature before they could
Yeah.
feed them in.
Yeah.
So even if they were all lit, they may well have been lit, just sort of.
That or these.
They're going
They could have
to
stuck
give
with
it a
boiler
bit of
room
a
two.
push. You're going to give it a bit of a push the next day. You want it there ready to go.
Well, boiler room two was the boilers on the wreck do show signs of imploding a little bit, and so it
Yeah.
could have been they just stuck with boiler room two.
Eh, Scotch boilers don't implode. They may have been crushed. You're talking about the one that's right where the bottom, right where it's collapsed like that.
Yes.
They may be crushed. It's because of how Scotch boilers are designed. They don't blow up. You always hear the story. The boilers blew up. No, the boilers didn't blow up. The steam pipes gave way. Yes, but the boilers themselves, they don't. The Scotch boilers are not designed that way. You got water around hot tubes, right? That's what heats the water up. So they don't work that way. They're not. They create the pressure in the tubes, but they don't. The whole boiler is not pressurized, I guess is what I'm saying. They don't blow up like that. But whatever the case may be, I forgot. Oh, the electrical. It takes about 8 hours. It takes 8 hours to get a Scotch boiler up to full heat. So they were they're getting ready to put those online. And the electric generating room can be operated from, I know, at least 2 of the boiler rooms, if not 3 of them, in case of an emergency. I know it was number one was one, and I forget it was number 3 maybe. But whatever the case may be, but maybe they were still putting on speed. That's probably the reason why Beasley noticed that. And you get to a certain RPM where you start feeling a vibration greater than earlier in the day. You know what I'm saying? Because they would have kept going. Unless you see something that's going to wreck this ship or cause great damage, it's still balls out. That's the way they drove those ships. You look at the testimony. If you read that testimony, and I have many times, and they bring in other captains, they're like, full speed ahead. Yeah, Did you
Yeah, it was SOP back then.
No, huh?
Yeah, it was SOP back then.
What's that?
Captain Smith was doing everything every other captain would have done.
And there's a lot of bragging with this Ismay thing here. Ismay caught a lot of shit for nothing. I'm going to tell you. And I read some of those. I have a copy. I just wrote an introduction from one of those, a reprint of one of those books that came out in 1912 where they sold from door to door. The story of Titanic and other great sea disasters. I got it sitting there. And all of this hearsay, I mean, all the text in these things all come from newspaper reports and other press interviews, and they compile them into these books. And you would have read some of the crap in there. Ismay got off in the first boat and flipped us all off on the way down, and all this other shit. Of course, none of it's true. But anyways, there's a lot of that in there. But Ismay, if Ismay would have went over to Captain Smith and said, let's go a little faster, Smith would have said, yeah, okay, fine, go away. I can guarantee that. They wouldn't have listened to him anyways. But he's around other passengers and he's bragging with an earshot of other people. And they did that back then, Was he really controlling the speed of the ship? No way. No,
but you have to think about, like, if you put yourself in Ismay's shoes. I mean, if I were Ismay and like they're testing the 3-bladed propeller, they've got a brand new ship, I'd be asking questions too. I'd be asking about the speed. I'd be asking about how it's running. I'd be going to different people, and because he had a lot of input into how the ship was designed as well.
Yeah, I don't believe that. Only thing Ismay knew about ships is how to sail on them and smoke cigars in the bathrooms. Yeah, in the aesthetics, maybe in the decoration. But when it came to the engineering, it was all Peary. Peary called the shots and the whole thing. He wrote them up and said, here, sign this. Okay. I guarantee it.
Oh, for a lot of it, most certainly. But
yeah,
if I'm Ismay, I'd at least want to know, like, everything that's going on, and that could have been misconstrued as him trying to pressure people into something.
Yeah, that's very true. That's true, Joshua. But you've got to remember, Ismay was on the main voyage of Olympic.
Mm-hmm.
And as an example, during that maiden voyage of the Olympic, Esme was on. Did he go up and say something to Smith at the time, push it along or anything? I've never read anything about conversation between Esme and Smith on Olympic's maiden voyage. And I would imagine on a Titanic's maiden voyage, the interaction between the two of them would have been exactly the same. You know, it's a new ship. How are we going? How's it comparing, to Olympic, And Smith said, well, look, it's 1,000 tons heavier or something, but, it's holding its own. We're doing rather well, I think he could have stuck his nose in wherever he wanted to, but I agree with Bruce. Bruce would have said, oh, look, Smith would have said to Esme, look, yeah, whatever, you're the boss. You cut the checks. It's fine. These two guys obviously knew each other. But could Esme influence the engineer or Smith to go a little bit faster? He would have listened to him. But there was, I think Esme probably, and I don't really know. I mean, he was out with the passengers, and he might have been just saying to everyone, "Yeah, we're going to push it along. We're going to do this," which is what you would expect him as the boss of the line to say. So, push it along. It wasn't going to go much faster. It was only going to go what, half a knot faster anyway. Flat out.
And it's funny too, because people really think that. Remember that speed, it starts when you leave the lightship in Belfast, and it ends when you get to the lightship in New York. But you don't want to get too early, because you know what? If you're going to get there too early, your ass is going to sit there floating, especially if you're arriving during non-working hours of the immigration office, because those guys only work so many hours a day. You arrive outside of those hours, your ass sat there at anchor until the next morning when they showed up. But you didn't want to you don't want to arrive too early in New York, because if you do, and write in a regulation book of White Star Line, do not arrive early, because otherwise they got to feed these people for an extra,
right.
The docks aren't prepared for that. They got to bring in all those supplies. Anyways, let's carry on. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's my understanding that the only thing they were working on wanting to do was break Olympics record and arrive earlier than Olympic.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't have to beat it by much, just enough to where it was noteworthy. But that's really what they wanted to do.
Anyways, right?
Yeah, that's all.
Even without trying, they were, weren't they?
Yeah, they were well on their way to doing so.
I think that's what I remember Mark saying that in one of his books.
So viewer on John Lupo, he has a good point here. He says people just survived a traumatic event, and people are going to be seeking scapegoats. The captain and most of the officers are not there. So Ismay is one of the few White Star representatives to survive, and fingers just got pointed at him. And that's unfortunate, because I think it just followed him the rest of his life, and he just never quite got over it. And that's just really unfortunate. So now anybody hears the name Ismay, they're like, oh yeah, that's that guy that sunk the Titanic.
The biggest villain in the whole Ismay thing is William Randolph Hearst.
Yes.
He had it out for Ismay from the get-go. Yeah. And that guy was like one of the icons of yellow journalism back in the day.
Yeah.
And so his coverage of Ismay and everything that happened was all negative for a reason, because he just didn't like Bruce Ismay.
Yeah.
This is my friend Bob Custer. Bob, everyone.
Hi, Bob.
Hi, Bob.
Bob,
I agree 100% with what you said.
I'm sorry, what was that, Bruce?
I agree 100% with what he said. If you read some of the other testimony from people that don't have an axe to grind, they said Ismay acted quite honorably. He was trying to get people into those lifeboats.
Mm-hmm.
People didn't want to get into the damn boats. Would you? Mm-hmm. I wouldn't. You got to imagine this. Look at the image in the front cover of my book, Titanic and 50 Objects. That's on purpose. All you see is this shadow of these thwarts. And imagine, and there's, I don't want to call it unsinkable ship, because that's another one of those things that pisses me off. Because, that's Hollywood created. But imagine you're on this great ship, and they're telling you, it's going to sink. Are you kidding me? And you want me to look over the edge, you see nothing but darkness. You're lucky if you see some glow from a sidelight, but probably not. But you want me to get in this below freezing weather into that boat to be lowered into complete darkness? No. And I think what happened with his man is they couldn't find anybody else to get in the boats. He goes, okay, nobody else, no, other women and children immediately here. I'm going to go with them. Okay, all right, see you later. He got in. I don't think it was a cowardly thing at all. I think it's
well,
And it
they
was
had a
like the
problem
last
with
boat,
it
wasn't it?
early
he
on.
was told to get in the boat.
Well,
Light
that's
taller,
up for debate. I mean,
yeah.
some people say he was, some people say he wasn't. I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
I
That's up
love
for,
Light Toller.
huh?
I'm going to write a script about. I'm going to write a script for a movie on Light Toller because his life reads like. Have you ever read his book? This guy was in the Yukon. You know, he's sabotaging the fort outside of Australia's waters over there. This guy, he was a Christian Scientist. Yeah. So
Light
yeah.
Toller is
So
interesting.
he'll
Didn't he
tell you.
get sucked into like
he's
a
one of
vent
those-
or something during the sinking and
Yes.
shot
Yep.
back out? And then,
At the same time, he claims that he saw the ship go down and didn't break up.
yeah.
Well,
Well, he was
Well, I mean,
struggling
if
for
he
his
got
life
sucked
in the
into a
water.
vent, I think it'd be kind of hard to see it get broken.
Right.
Yeah, he was struggling for his life in the water.
the lawyers
So-
are trying to get to him, and he's smart. He's very careful on how he answers questions. We read him very carefully. And they asked him because he got sucked into the grate and the number one funnel, and then the hot water came up from the boiler room and blew him off of the grate. And the lawyers asked him very carefully, "How did you leave the ship?" His response, "I didn't leave
Ship
the
left
ship.
me."
The ship left me." Bam! Go home. He got you.
I'd
Light
be
Tower's
very interested to
What a
look at
great answer.
how many of the people from the water who were in the water actually said that the ship broke apart, because I don't think it was very many. I've read several people who were in the water who emphatically stated that the ship did not break up, but they were also they had other stuff on their minds. So I know there were a lot of people in the boats who saw it and said they saw it in their private accounts or on the newspapers, but I wonder how many of those were actually fighting for their lives at the time.
I've always
Well-
said it was a matter of vantage point. If
Yep.
you're in a lifeboat and you're like far, far away and
Mhm.
it's pitch black dark, you're not going to see it break apart.
Yeah.
But if you're like in the water or if you're a little bit closer in a closer lifeboat, I mean, you'd have to be at just the right angle to see that happen because it was so dark. There were no lights at that point. You're going to hear horrible things. You're going to hear, but you're not going to know that it broke apart unless you were in just the right place. Because I don't know if it broke just like it was in Cameron's movie. I think it broke maybe just a little tiny bit below the surface or right at the surface to where just
He even admitted that he refilmed the whole thing in 2001 when "This Is How Titanic Sank Because I Said So" episode. But he was right. He redid that whole thing. Because Titanic didn't break in half above the water. It was a process. So the people that testified that they say it break in half is, what is your definition of breaking in half? It started to separate right at above the water, but it still didn't break into two pieces. It was a whole process. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because I think
it's hard to explain.
Pulled the stern under, but the stern to look the way it did, I think it still had air in it. So I think the bow like pulled it under, at least to an extent. So I'm kind of one of these people that doesn't believe that it completely broke apart at the surface. I think that, it had to have been pulled under, and it was already, at least partially under the water when it broke apart because with the trapped air,
I agree.
It caused like implosions as it was,
Well,
sinking.
They did some really good stuff on this, and Cameron did a lot of really good stuff on this after his movie. And I mean, they went as far as to, loading the ship properly and even taking the coal out of the starboard bunker to see if it made a difference, and then adding that weight of the coal back in. When they added the weight of the coal back in, the ship actually rolled over. When they took the weight of the coal out, the ship remained upright because the water took up that weight. Because you remember, Titanic had a port list. After about halfway through, and Sunday morning, it had that port list. And so they did a lot of stuff. And I mean, they were putting in numbers, the weight, configuring the ship properly. And once they got that set, every time they did their model, the ship sank the exact same way. And they show that keel, the actual keel of the ship, hanging on as the bow hangs on for that split few seconds and then breaks off and makes its dive down. And that's when you see the back of the ship fall down that little bit.
Michael has something to say. What's up, Michael?
I was agreeing with what Bob was just saying, because there are illustrations in books I've seen years ago that show that the keel was still attached.
Mhm.
And then once it broke free, that's when what my grandfather described as the ship settling back and everybody thinking she was going to float. Of course, they couldn't see that the front half was gone.
Mhm.
They were all off the rear quarter of the ship itself. But they described exactly what Bob was just saying, that the ship had gone up into the air and then settled back down. And at that point was when it settled back down is when my great grandmother released my grandfather, and he was able to see the ship finally go under the surface.
Wow, so he remembered all that. Did he ever talk to you about it?
He's talked to me several times. I mean, I don't remember a time when I didn't know that
Mhm.
he had survived as a young boy.
Mhm.
He even described it in his book, Echoes in the Night, and I don't know if you've seen it, what the cover looks like, but good luck finding one, because I've been trying to find another one
I
for
want the
years.
first edition.
Yeah,
That's the one with the
But,
the Timor shawl on
yeah.
it.
You can buy the
Yeah.
second edition from the Titanic Historical Society website.
right. It's called Titanic Eyewitness.
Hmm. I went the
The
first.
same book, but even then, you can actually hear him on YouTube if you look up Mansfield Rotary Club, because
Mhm.
they made a recording of him, and I've posted it to you before the last time I was on. And he's telling his story, and he talks about what he saw that night.
I need to post that in the group, or on the page or something so everybody can hear it. It's really good.
I
And
can
then,
do it for you right now.
okay, thank you. And then your Uncle Frank, his story is just,
Yeah, when he tells the
I
story,
love
he tells it more in depth than I did, because he heard it from not just my grandfather, his dad, but also his grandmother.
I
So
love his story. I could just listen to it over and over. Um,
He's the only one of your family who heard it from Emily, right?
no, my dad and my other uncle heard it both. You know,
Okay, so all of them heard it.
but what my Uncle Frank is the only one that is involved in Titanic events of any kind. In
Okay.
fact, when they recovered the whistles from Titanic, he sounded them when they were ready to test the whistles out.
Mm.
I just posted the video of that the other day. My friend Tarn let me use it. I did not see Frank. I need to go back and watch that. Because it was the
He may
whistles
not
being
have,
tested.
he may not have been there the first time, but I know he told me that he sounded the whistles.
Maybe
So I
because
don't know what.
the video turned so it was
what-
like them testing it, but I think that was prior to them like actually doing it in front of like people.
Yeah,
So I don't
I
know.
don't
Maybe
think he did it in front of people.
it was a long time ago, so it could be that he looked a lot different. I don't
Yeah.
know. I'll have to go back and rewatch it. Um, but it's such a cool video to just hear the whistle sound again is just amazing. Just truly amazing. I could listen to it all day. In fact, I took it to school and I was like, "Hey guys, you want to hear Titanic's whistles?" And they're like, "Miss Strasburg, please stop." And I was just going around school like, "Here's Titanic's whistles." They're like, "Stop, please."
I think they only used compressed air, I think, when they
Yes.
tested it.
Yeah, it was compressed
They
air.
used compressed air. And the only other sound that I remember from an Olympic class whistle was that footage when it was coming to New York. And, the tugs were blowing their horns, and Olympic blew its horn a few times. And it sounded much the same as when they the recovered whistles. I just don't think they want to put that much pressure in case they damaged it.
Yeah, I think they've determined that they're not going to do those tests again.
Mhm.
So, and the thing is, would it have sounded much different if you'd put twice as much air in? Probably not.
No,
No,
It's
no.
just
I just no, I wouldn't, mate. Just turn the volume up a little bit more. That's
Right.
all. And if you wanted to capture it a little bit better, you could have sort of had it in a room where you get a little bit of an echo or something like that, so you get a sound going out instead of just concentrate in front of the mic. But I reckon that's what it would have sounded like. Because only the two whistles worked on the first and the second funnel. Because on the third and fourth funnel, they were just dummies. The whistles. I think the whistles only worked on the number 1 and number 2 funnel. And they were dummies on just ornaments basically on the third and fourth funnel. I'm not even sure whether they're made out of brass. They might have been. Probably could have had spare ones there. If the one at the front broke, take the one that's only the dummy at the back. So I don't know. Maybe Bruce knows. Where's Bruce gone? Bruce would.
it to take a
know.
break.
Yeah, the funnels only worked. The whistles only worked on the first and second funnels.
So Joanna, by the way, I sank my Titanic again.
Oh, you did? What happened?
Every time I come on with you, I sink my Titanic.
Yeah.
Okay, so you sent me the link to the Rotary Club
Yeah.
recording. Did you want me to share it in the group real quick?
Yeah, you're gonna have to because I can't.
I can do that, not a problem. I will do
I can't go live on Facebook for 20 more days.
What did you do?
What'd you do?
I posted something 10 years ago and they got me for it.
I got you for it.
No.
How dare you?
There's Bruce.
Well,
Okay, I
I don't
can
like
do-
Biden, so there you are.
So did you name the next time off on your timeline?
All right, let me
Yeah,
do the
yes.
next slide real quick. Hold on, then I'll post that. Oh my goodness. Okay, where are we? Nope, that's oh there we go. So the next slide is gonna be 10:30 Titanic time. Maybe. There we go. Nope. Yes. Okay. 10:30 Titanic time. It's 5 bells. Do you hear the bells?
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then along with that, it was 10:33 on the timeline. But for some reason at 10:33, they received a message from Californian that was stamped 10:21. It says Californian ATS ship forced to stop because of a field of pack ice directly in her path. Delivered DR position was 42 degrees, 02 north, 50 degrees, 07 west, 17 miles from where Titanic's SOS position was later given. Now, okay. So that's all we have for right now. I'll stop sharing that. So that's interesting. It's always been long debated how far away California was from Titanic. Now, it's always been debated as to whether or not the SOS position was accurate, right? So California's position supposedly is 17 miles away from where Titanic's SOS position was, but it's debatable as to whether that was right. So I don't know.
You're trying to work out, Joe.
I'm just trying to work that
But-
out. I'm like, so were
but-
they 17 miles away from Titanic, or were they not 17 miles away? Were they closer? Were they farther away? This is just
Yeah.
something that people are going to debate. Like,
Yeah, but it's a matter of height. What at the time Titanic passengers saw a ship when they were on the deck after she stopped,
Mhm.
and if the mystery ship was that far away, how did people in the lifeboats on the water see the mystery ship?
I know they were actually trying to get to the ship. I mean, they thought it
That's
was so
right.
close that they were trying to row to the ship.
Well,
So
how
I'm like,
how could they row to it if it was below the horizon at 17 miles? You wouldn't even see it. You'd be down on the
right.
water. How
That's
close
so
was it?
confusing.
Well, it is very confusing, and then what's confusing too is why didn't they call the lookout off the California to one of at the inquiries? They didn't ask the lookout on the California. What was he doing? And he was on duty because I did read it. So he was sitting up there. He must have seen something. So
Hmm.
they
I
didn't
mean, they
ask
did
him.
see something. They thought that Titanic was a steamer ship.
Hmm. Yeah.
Well,
Could have
and
been.
then when they were asked, um, they were told by was it Evans or not Evans? One of the officers on deck. Lord had asked them what ships they were expecting that evening, and they said only the Titanic. That was the only ship they were expecting in that area was the Titanic from the
But then they
east.
said, "Oh, this must be what did they say? Like a whale ship or
A tramp steamer.
a tramp steamer or something." They thought it was maybe a ship that wasn't, accurately logged or something. And I was like, wouldn't you still like try to check that out? I don't know. I mean, I was just like,
There was a lot of failures on the part of the Californian crew that night. Whether or not Titanic is
I always refer back to this book, The Midnight Watch. It's just so, Josh, have you read it?
I haven't yet.
It's so detailed about, has anybody in here read it? The Midnight Watch?
What's it about?
It's so well, huh? It's so well researched. It's a fictional, historical fictional book, but it's written by David Dyer. He actually like physically went and looked at the transcripts and read the transcripts from the inquiries, like U.S. and British. He went to Boston. He went to like everywhere that he mentions in this book, he went there. And he did extensive research. He had like a whole website detailing all the research that he did for this book. And it's like the fictional part is the fact that his main character is a a reporter from Boston, and his boss tells him, "Go find the bodies." That's what sells. He's like, "Find the bodies, find out what happened to the bodies." Well, the reporter just gets in really deep, and he finds out about the Californian, and he's like, "Why, if they were so close, why didn't they try to help?" And so then it dives into the story of Titanic. So then it starts telling you the vantage point from the Californian, like from uh, Captain Lord's vantage point, from Cyril Evans' vantage point, from some of the lookouts' vantage points. Then you have the officers on the Titanic from their vantage points. And then you have like the Sage family from their vantage point. And then I think it's another couple of people that you see there on the Titanic. And it just follows all of these people as the whole story unfolds. And it's just so very detailed. Um, and then he finally writes his article, and the article is called I think 8 White Rockets. So you have that in there. And then at the end he finally, he's older. It's years and years after the Titanic. And he meets up with an old Captain Lord. And he wants to know why he didn't, follow up. Why did he just let the Titanic sink without even trying to help? The way it ends is just so like just gripping. But so I won't spoil it if you guys ever. But it just but he walks through like almost every second of, Lord going and laying back down in the chart room, and the confusion between how he couldn't communicate with his crew, and the why, and Cyril Evans like, why won't he communicate with me? And then the officer on the bridge, I see these things, but the captain, he won't communicate with me. Is it my responsibility to follow up? Is it his responsibility to follow up? It's just like this so awkwardness. You're like, maybe that's what it was. It was just really interesting.
I'm going to give you my opinion about Lord.
Mhm.
First of all, Captain Lord was in charge of the whole thing. So I read that. I read the attitude and the testimony. They wouldn't have done a damn thing unless Lord told them to, because I think he was like an autocratic leader. Okay. But Lord, I used to be an anti-Lord guy, right? But now after all these years and all this study I've done, what Lord did what he was supposed to do. He signaled back. He used marsh lamps.
Yeah.
People expect him to be Captain Kirk. He's not
Mhm.
Captain Kirk. It was the first captainage across the Atlantic. In fact, he didn't have that kind of experience. We
Mhm.
would have wished he would have. That he would have taken this, said, wake up the radio Marconi guy and have him break. Hello, but he ain't Captain Kirk.
Yeah.
This guy had done everything by the book that he was trained to do. He should go back with signal lamps. Well, too far away. Nobody saw him.
Mhm.
So he did what he had to do, and by luck, the radio operator was he thinking, one last, they happened to figure it out. Right? Is it him that putting his boots on or taking his boots off? He decided to put the headset on. He wouldn't have been able to help him anyways. He was too far away, and it would have been too hard to get there because of the ice. We know that, but it doesn't make any difference because nobody wants to hear that part because there's always got to be a scapegoat, and
Right.
he caught it. Was there another ship around there? Yeah, there may have been. There may have been other ships in the area.
Well, we know
We'll
there
never
were.
know.
Mhm.
Just keep chasing close,
We know that there were several,
Mhm.
but they were all, like Bruce said.
Yeah.
I mean, they were too far away. I mean, we had Masaba. There was the Frankfurt. What's another one? Josh, help me out. Mount Temple. We know Mount
Mhm.
Temple was nearby. But again, they're all surrounded by ice, and it would have been a suicide mission for any of them to or if they would even just slow ahead.
And
They're
ships
going to
like
dodge icebergs and all that. It would have taken them 2 hours to get there.
and ships like the Olympic and the Baltic were also too far, were just way too far
Yeah.
away to
Yep.
do any good for many, many hours. So
And either way, just watch the Titanic sink, would you have wanted to get on the Olympic anyway? Kara, get on this exact ship that just sank.
Who would have assumed that the Titanic would be putting up distress signals because she was sinking? Who would ever believe that?
Right.
Mhm.
Not the Titanic. What is the guy? Didn't he ask? Or are they company signals or distress rockets?
Mhm.
Well, they're distress rockets, sir. Can't be. Nah.
Yeah,
I'll
not the
signal the ship
Titanic.
and see how they respond.
Mhm.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, it was.
So, but Lord got what he should have gotten. He didn't get disbarred or he didn't get his
Mhm.
license, but I think he was suspended for a while, wasn't he?
Yes.
Mhm.
But he didn't, he didn't pull his license on him. I think he got just for being really, you expected him to be a seasoned sea dog, and he wasn't, obviously.
I don't care for this notion of there has to be a villain of Titanic, because we live in this world where we're all obsessed with superheroes and the heroes and the villains and stuff. And there were certainly people with the Titanic story that stepped up to the plate who did really well, saved a lot of lives. But then more often than not, you'll just find people who are doing their jobs, who are just doing what they knew to do. And yeah, I've yet to find someone of real intent towards the lives on board, towards the ship, towards the people. This is just a thing that happened. It was a horrible thing that
Well,
happened.
aside from usually just portraying him as an ignorant buffoon, I've never really seen Captain Lord actively vilified the way we usually see Ismay. The only instance I can is this is an old example I usually give as the pinnacle of terrible Titanic fiction. There's a novel called The Icefall that was later published as Titanic, a love story, and then Secrets of the Titanic. And it's like a fictional soap opera storylines aboard the Titanic, and what that book claims, and the author does do a disclaimer, it's fiction, that Captain Lord and Captain Smith are in a love triangle with a woman, and she's on board the Titanic with Captain Smith, and he knows it, so he doesn't want to rescue them on purpose. And Captain Smith
There
dies.
you go.
And Captain Smith dies making out with his mistress on the bridge as the water floods.
Well, that's what happened.
The book is it's hilarious, but I almost wonder if the author was in on the joke when she was writing it.
Yeah.
Anyway, what I was
Yes.
saying about the Midnight Watch, it delves into Captain Lord's like psyche, I guess. It just on so many levels. It just tries to explain everything, but then it explains that he did everything, like you said, Bruce, by the book. He was an older, well, we're all like screaming in our head, go wake up Cyril Evans, make him get on the Marconi, have him call. But he did everything, like he was supposed to. But while he's doing that, the officer out there is like, got an ulcer, like, he knows something is wrong and feels like they should be doing more about it. And
I think the worst thing Lord did was not go up and see the signals for himself. That was probably the worst thing. That right there is kind of what sealed his can as being the scapegoat, unfortunately.
But again, I mean, it's interesting, I mean, they did send up the rockets and,
Are you sure they were white? Where's Don Lynch?
He's in the Queen Mary.
Sure they were white? I didn't hear that. Say what was that?
He's cheating on us.
What did he say? I didn't
Bob
hear
said,
what
are
he
you
said
sure
about
they
the
were
whites.
white rockets?
I said, are you sure they were white rockets? Where's Don Lynch?
I'm going to tell you a story here.
They ought to be red for
And
distress.
I don't know. I don't know what Sam has in his book, but I seem to recall when he was writing that, him and I agreed on a lot of things, but there was one thing we didn't, and I could be wrong. Maybe it wasn't Sam, but I think it was. But the distress rockets didn't have to be white; they were of any color.
Correct.
And I think they had it. Maybe it wasn't with him. It was somebody. I said, if you read the regulations, and you got to read the 1911 ones,
right?
Not the ones prior. The ones that are right there before 1912, they changed, like the designation between a Roman candle, a company signal, they're all different. But the ones that shot stars of any color, so they could have been white, they could have been red, it doesn't make any difference. It's the fact that they shot stars is what made them a distress signal.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and how
There's
high they went.
articles written about that.
Yeah. I think Sam.
Doesn't make any difference how high they went.
I think that was Sam that did that. And I think he was one that found out too. I could be wrong, but I think he's the one that found out too that the company that made those rockets only made those rockets in white. That particular company only made those rockets in white. And that's pretty well known. But you still have, people like Herbert Pittman, Charles Lightoller, Boxhall, they all say they saw different color stars. But you have to also they're looking at all this through the steam being let off from the boiler rooms.
Yeah.
And we know what
It doesn't
that
make any difference what color they were, though.
No, it doesn't. That's not what I'm saying. They were definitely distress rockets. It doesn't matter what color. The color regs say, rockets of any color displaying stars or balls, with a report. That's a distress signal. And you're right. Yeah. They differentiate between company signals, Roman candles, and distress rockets. And it's pretty clearly laid out as far as I'm concerned. I mean, you can't confuse it.
Yeah, I agree. That's true. So, thinking about, it's a wrong. The conspiracy theorists will go, well, they were the wrong color rockets, wrong color stars, of any color.
Yep.
So, I mean, all just crash and burn. The Norman Rockwell paintings are hitting the floor. I'm saying this, but whatever.
It all could have been cleared up if they had just woke up Cyril Evans.
Right.
It just bake him up. Hey, be like, hey, dude, call over there to the Titanic, call Titanic to see what's going on.
Bruce pointed out earlier, though, even if they were in contact with Titanic,
there was
not much they could do.
They probably couldn't have, but just to find out all that questioning, just what's going on over there, are they distress rockets? Is that a tramp steamer?
Was it Don Lynch who said that last year's convention that they were pretty much condemned not because they it didn't matter that they couldn't do anything, it's that they didn't even make an attempt.
Right. They didn't even make an effort.
At least they could have tried. I mean, I'm just like I said the other night, I'm the kind of person, I just don't give up. Like, I would have been throwing stuff in the water. I would have been ripping doors off the hinges. I'm like, I would not have been that person that would have just been like, yeah, I would not have been giving up, I guess, if I was on the Californian, I would have been like, dude, wake somebody up, call over there in the Marconi, make sure, what's going on. Why would they be shooting rockets off at like midnight? Don't they go to bed?
Yeah,
that's a weird time to shoot off rockets. I would just have been like, I don't care if the captain had fired me or not. I would have just been like, Captain Lord, I think something's wrong. I don't know. I wouldn't have given up on that. That's just my personal
right.
opinion.
That's that's something that that's it's a very American attitude, in my opinion. Because we we grew up on Star Trek. I think I go back to Captain Kirk. It's like, hello, use some common sense here. And even if it comes back to bite you in the ass later, you're taking your chances. It's like you can just hear it. You can taste it in the testimony that senior officer on the deck didn't want to overstep Lord, and Lord was autocrat. He was an autocratic leader, and what he says is what goes. But sir, they're throwing stars. I'll signal them with the moles and see if they respond. Okay.
I mean, people in the Titanic were like
I think
dying.
a lot of these times, a lot of these sailors didn't like the Marconi either.
They weren't looking for light signals. They were
these
like,
guys didn't like that. I think they looked at it as an interference.
oh, they were over there dying. They weren't looking for, light signals and stuff. They were trying to not die.
Well, that's not entirely true, Joe.
Really?
Early in the sinking, when they first spotted that ship, they did attempt a Morse signal from a Morse light signal from Titanic. And but the other ship was so far away, they couldn't discern if it was just a flicker of the light or if they were trying to signal a Morse. So it was indiscernible. It was I mean, really it was lack of communication.
Yeah.
You're too far away from Morse.
Yep.
But again, like when I talk to, whenever I give Titanic talks or whatever, one of the things I always mention, it was a tragedy, but why do we still talk about Titanic? And this is one of the things I say, lifeboat drills, the fact that there's now a regulatory commission out there monitoring icebergs, and then the fact that there's 24/7, coverage for, well, at the time it was Marconi coverage, and then it advanced. There's always somebody that can be reached. My husband is a history teacher.
They
And he
don't
does
use the ship's Wi-Fi.
wait a minute. He does National History Day projects, and so this year their topic, I guess, or they have to have a topic every year. So this year, turning points in history, and one group of students did what was it, the Telegraph Act of 1912 or something, like, somebody help me. But it was what came about after Titanic sank, where the radio has to be manned 24/7. There's a direct
24-hour radio operation. Lifeboat for everybody. The International Ice Patrol. Lifeboat drills, which you already mentioned. And they moved the shipping lanes farther south. Those are the top 5 things they did.
That all comes with the SOLAS rules, SOLAS safety of life at sea. And they come only because Titanic sunk. And they are guilty until today.
It was a radioactive 1912. Radioactive 1912. Act to regulate radio communications. And it was required all radio operators to be federally licensed and all ships to maintain constant radio alert for distress signals. So somebody has to be manning the radio 24/7 on ships. That was a direct result of the Titanic tragedy, so that the Cyril Evans effect would not happen again.
And the other thing that happened was SOS became the only recognized distress call. Even though SOS had been around for about 5 years, they were still using CQD until after the Titanic sank. Then it became SOS. And the last SOS in 1999, I think it was.
So I always tell kids, I'm like, why do you think that you do these things? It's because the Titanic sank. And they're like, oh, wow. I'm like, so there's a reason, why. It's because, the Titanic sank. They're like, oh, we didn't do that.
And that's not to mention all the things that happened because of all the people who of note who passed, and that's not including of course, the butterfly effect with all families of all classes, but like I'm talking, we had people involved in politics and business and religion, uh, all these things, that affected everyday working people on each side of the Atlantic. And with their deaths came a lot of things and changes that probably wouldn't have happened without them.
I
Um,
also I also sometimes wonder if it changed the whole, even though the inquiry said that the third class was not mistreated, I do wonder if they did change around layout of ships in terms of how the classes were divided to give easier access points in case of an emergency. Because please tell me I'm not having a Mandela effect, but on Britannic, the little terracing in the back, the boat A, B deck. Didn't on Britannic they add little staircases, which makes it a lot easier for third class to get on the boat deck? Because the Titanic and Olympic didn't have the staircases, it was just one deck after another. But
I
I
think it
think
was kind of the
on the
beginning
back,
at the end of like the
Class system.
party system.
yeah, after World War One, there
Just
was
in
didn't even have it.
general.
But
And I
people
think
were
they
correct, but there still had tourist class and second class, and there was still pretty much, you get what you pay for. What I'm thinking about out loud about is like after Titanic and the mess that the evacuation was, I'm just wondering if they like going forward if they added like easier access points,
like
easier,
maybe label things better so
yeah,
that
like
people at
I'm
the
sure
time.
that I'm sure they did.
What he's saying,
emergency exits that
Mhm.
that you can open
Um,
easier just to
It's
get people out of the ship as soon as
I
possible.
I
it's
found out
possible
that
because I found some indication that the third class passengers were interviewed in New York and Chicago by certain groups that advocate for the wellness of third class immigrants. And so I've been seeking and searching for those interviews, those documents, and haven't found them. I'm assuming that some of those files were destroyed over the years, lost over the years, but um there was definitely a concerted attempt to verify and make sure that third class not only was fairly treated during the voyage, but also had appropriate means of evacuation during the sinking.
Because what I think my
Yeah.
issue with third class is that the fact that unlike the myth that they were maliciously locked below to die, I think the truth in some ways is even worse. Like it wasn't intentionally trying to drown them
Mhm.
and keep them below. It's the fact that the crew just forgot about them
Yes.
because they were not in
the,
front of them.
the
They were not
biggest issue
Let Michael
that
get his
faced
point out.
third class wasn't whether they were being held down purposely or not. It's the fact that most of third class and steerage passengers didn't speak English. And so
Mhm.
they couldn't understand when they were being let up. And there were also cases and you saw this in the first and second classes also, where they were taken up to the boats, put into a
What's
boat,
that?
and they jumped back onto the ship and went inside because it was warm. And we
Well,
hear,
that's
I
all
think,
true.
I
I
think
agree
Bruce
with
talked
that.
about earlier the darkness of going into that boat and then over the side and not seeing what was there. That was probably also a factor, but it had more to do with the temperature outside. Okay, it's cold out here. I'm going inside where it's warm. But there were
And
also
Right.
cases where third class were stopped by locked gates, which were
No.
by regulation due to U.S. immigration law,
Right.
not because the ship wanted to do it. It wasn't
That's not
they
true.
had to
one
be
of the
left
changes.
out of Ellis Island to be checked
One
for
of the
disease.
changes after Titanic was no more locked gates, and you see this in ships today because they still have a class system per se. Like my wife and I are sailing on the Queen Mary next year, the Queen Mary 2. And there are different cabins and categories in the cabins according to how much you pay for them. But there are very few spaces that every passenger on board cannot uh, go to
Access.
or
Hmm.
experience.
Yeah,
And
the
you're gonna
There
have
are
a
some
lifeboat
first
drill.
class that they're like they have the Queen's Grill and the Princess Grill. The Queen's Grill and the Queen Mary 2. Only in Queen's Grill or above can you enter that lounge in restaurant. And same with the Princess Grill. But everybody else, you've got the main restaurant.
They even added a fourth class recently. I call it fake grills, even though I'm doing it next year on the Queen Anne. Britannia Club. I call it
Yeah,
fake.
but you're still just Britannia. You're paying more for do the same thing. So why
No,
would
you,
you do
you
that?
get a separate. There's a separate. It's like a separate dining room annex, and you get like an extra appetizer. Good for you.
Nice
And you're
retro.
guaranteed a better. And you're guaranteed a premium balcony, a regular balcony cabin in the middle.
Yeah,
A lifeboat
but
obstruction.
also in that class, you get the obstructed balcony where you're looking at a lifeboat.
No. What I'm saying is, club guarantees no obstructed. Regular Britannia, you can get stuck with it obstructed. But
No.
if you shell for
Well,
club,
that might be on you're going on the what? The Queen Anne?
Queen Anne, it's doing its first transatlantic in
Okay.
January.
Yeah. With
So Thorsten, we're gonna
Queen
hang out.
Mary too, which is bigger. It's 1,138 feet
Yeah,
long.
I've been on the Queen
And
Mary.
You know,
The-
Ev, my
the
birthday's
bal-
in January. Just
So
throwing
when-
it out there.
You want to come with me?
Yeah.
you got time to, and you got
I wanted
time to
to
grab
say
the
that-
last minute deal on the Queen Mary 2 by then.
Must be nice,
I
right?
just had,
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Can I just say this?
Interesting fact. The rules today guilty on the shipping lines, we have to thank the inquiries for. Especially William Alden Smith
Yep.
made such a big job. And to show something, I don't know if it is
Yep.
visible.
Oh, wow.
That's
Ooh.
the original speech from William Alden Smith
Oh, wow.
at the end.
very cool.
Then he
Huh?
turned the whole inquiry into me.
This-
No.
And
Wow.
Well,
he made such a big job. And by the way, here is the British inquiries, complete every word they said.
Are those
Wow.
6
Don't
and
know.
12 editions?
No?
How old is that, Thorsten? When was that printed?
Must also 1912.
Wow.
Mm.
That is really
And-
neat.
Were they actually published for the public? Could the public get them, or like were they sold? or-
It was made. I must look for a newspaper. They had it into the British Titanic Inquiry. One moment. I have it new. It arrived 4 days ago or so. We printed from the Journal of Commerce, Liverpool and London. So it's the official report. And what's also important, the first-hand reports from passengers on board. One of the best is, it's hard to read, The Truth About the Titanic.
Archibald Gracie.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Exact. And
That's nice.
very rare book. Interesting fact is the most people will tell you there exists only one edition from this book. That's the reason why I have 3 different in my bookshelf.
He died shortly after he published it, if I recall correctly.
He didn't even get to finish writing it before he died.
Yeah, but all people tell you always there exist only one edition of this book from 1913. I have 3 different, all from 1913, all with different pictures in it. It's very interesting, you know,
Hmm.
and it's very hard to find. This is, by the way, in double one. So at the moment, I have 4 of them.
Very
I know
nice.
I know many people who are searching for one.
Very
So
nice.
yeah, one will come the next days to eBay.
If Thorsten, if I do come and visit you and when I'm in
Website.
Hamburg, don't be suspicious if I come in a very roomy big jacket.
Mm.
There was absolutely
Joanna,
nothing Would have been
kids
episode-
ask you about the
You
What
will
was that?
watch.
Um,
You-
when the
Bruce?
kids ask you about the Titanic and what keeps the Titanic alive, is because this is the single most greatest disaster brought around the most amount of changes to safety. Nothing since then has ever created more worldwide changes to safety and regulations. That is also an example of mankind's complacency in his own technology. Every once in a while, every 10 years or so, mankind becomes too complacent, too trustworthy in the things that we've invented. And this is one of those instances. You know, the space shuttle is another one. Well, we can get away without painting that, the large, the fuel tank. Well, guess what? And I can't think of anything. The Hindenburg is a little bit different because that was, had to do with, with there was
Weather,
pre-war,
static electricity.
or post-war things or whatever. But this thing was mankind being too complacent in itself, and we grow as a people, we too trustworthy in our own technology, and sometimes we've got to be set back. We think we know it all, and guess what? We don't. And this disaster was the greatest disaster, the most loss of life, the most regulations that have ever changed the world. Yeah.
Only to have only to have a little bit fun. A little piece of the Hindenburg hang here on my wall.
Yeah, that's one thing I liked about A Night to Remember is at the end when Lightoller and Gracie are having a discussion, and Lightoller's talking about how they were so sure, and now he's not going to be able to trust anything again. And all of that. It was beautifully portrayed as the feeling of the time. How could this happen? How could the biggest ship afloat, albeit for a week, full of all these people of all different walks of life, just send them all into facing the same terrible fate or same terrible situation? It's just mind-boggling. Even today, it's like Cameron said, it's like a Greek tragedy.
Yes. All right, let's pinboard that for a second, or put a pin in it, and I'm going to share the next slide. Let's see. Okay. Maybe. All right. No, it's not 10 o'clock. Hold on. There we go. So it's 11 o'clock, 6 bells, and the lights in the saloons are extinguished. There you are. I tried to put like some pictures of, they say saloons, but I think they're still talking about like the dining rooms. Is that
No, I think they meant a saloon was like but even
Like
by
the
then
bars?
it was an outdated term for any general public room.
Any general public room? Well, I couldn't find picture of those, so I just put these pictures. I
But
did-
by any general public room, the lounge, the smoking room, the
They're also called salons or saloons. It depends on who
saloons.
you talk to and which version of the story you read.
Okay.
Although,
So
to be
anyway,
fair,
so things
I
start
think
shutting
it's
down
not
around
gonna be-
11, basically, is the gist that I'm getting here. So things start kind of shutting down, the public areas start shutting down. I would assume it doesn't specify like what class. I guess, does that mean like all over the ship, you guys?
From what I read, third class usually got extinguished a lot earlier. They sent them to bed earlier.
Okay.
Yeah, third, second class. I think they sent the people out of the second class library and lounge. First class smoke room is the only one I'm aware of where they were still
at 11 o'clock
out and about, which I'm pretty sure the staff was probably like, please go to bed. But
Don't forget about the poker game that was going on in the salon.
They still do it on cruise ships. When they start winding down.
And the first class, there was a poker game going on. But I don't remember where it was at.
When you say that, all I can think about is Titanic Adventure Out of Time, when you go into the smoking room and you can play blackjack with that guy.
I learned to play blackjack thanks to that game. I still play. When I go to casinos, I play it. I
don't know why when I went to Vegas, I thought it was going to be like that, and it so wasn't, and I lost money. And And my husband was like, all right, let's go.
When I was on the
It
Queen
was,
Mary
it was
2,
not at all like Titanic Adventure at a Time. I
When
thought
I
I
was
was going to be really good at it, and I wasn't.
Joanna, when I was on the Queen Mary 2, I actually went into the casino, which is super small in the Queen Mary 2 because nobody really goes there. And I played blackjack while crossing the ocean on the Queen Mary 2.
I'm
And
jealous.
I won $50. Then I
Oh,
lost
good for you.
200.
Okay.
I
All
usually
right,
end
so
at I won 50. And
all right. All right, so it's time to move on to the next slide, and then we've got a little break. All right, so 11:07 Titanic time, wireless operator Evans on Californian sends wireless message to Titanic. MGY is MWL. We are stopped and surrounded by ice. Phillips on Titanic was busy working Cape Race at the time and told Evans, keep out. Ev has something interesting to add here, don't you, Ev?
regarding what?
Regarding this little entry on our timeline. Didn't you just get a doll that represents one of these
Oh,
yellow?
yeah. I can't believe you fell for it was just somebody made a joke that that it has a string and says "Shut up, I'm working Cape Race." I can't believe you took that seriously. It's just the porcelain doll of Jack Phillips.
Well, why would they put that on the
My
description?
dog, my dog, my dog like hated him. I thought she was gonna like grab him by the throat and drag him out of the box.
Well, either way, I've still never seen a doll like this.
There's some uncanny valley thing going on.
You guys have to understand the description of this doll said that if you pull a string, it says, shut up, I'm working Cape Race. And I was like,
His little.
oh, I really want this. If I wasn't so broke, I would have gotten it, and I would have been terribly disappointed that it didn't say that.
I don't think it even said that in
because
the
he didn't actually
description.
say shut up.
It did say that.
But he didn't actually say shut up though either.
No, he didn't.
Then he was
But still, I was like really fascinated that there was
I
a
think
doll
we-
that was supposed
I think
to.
the only movie that even shows him saying "shut up" is the '96 miniseries, and we all know how accurate that is.
Yes, we know your feelings about the 96.
Because
can't be the only one.
you know that he didn't actually say shut up. He kept punching the letter D, and that was
Yes.
the Marconi signal for get off the air because this is important.
And at that point-
translated out to be shut up.
And that was unfortunate because at that point, Evans decided that he was just going to go to bed.
And I think most people don't just realize wireless back then wasn't really used for navigation or crew exchanging information.
Mhm.
It was mostly a novelty for the passengers. It was basically in the same class as the Turkish baths or the squash
Mhm.
court.
The operators pretty much made a lot of their money from the tips from the passengers, so they were the priority. And they got backed up on the messages when the Marconi apparatus broke.
Mhm.
So,
And that's another thing that I tell my students too when they start asking questions. I'm like, I said, if it wasn't for those Marconi operators, everyone on the ship would have died because people are like, why did they want to, take the Marconi from the Titanic? And, that's just grave robbing. I'm like, do you realize the historical significance of that? If, it hadn't been for those Marconi operators,
Or if they
everyone
haven't
would have
fixed
died.
it on the day before the sinking and used that backup
Mhm.
generator. That
if,
And I'm like-
if someone gets up and tries to say salvage from Titanic is grave robbing,
Mhm.
and they don't talk about they don't give one crap about Lusitania
Mhm.
or the Empress of Ireland or any of these other shipwrecks with large losses of life, then I
Mhm.
don't want to hear them.
I usually just say calm down, Eva.
It's
And
yeah,
I'm like-
they really don't have much of a point if it's just their one favorite ship and it's not
Mhm.
the law of the land for all
Right.
ships similar.
I like to ask them why Titanic.
Right. And I
You
usually
know.
come back with, what about the pyramids in Egypt?
Yeah.
Where they literally took mummies out that are dead bodies and put them in museums for people to come and look at. The
Not
dead
just
bodies.
museums. Some rich
And
people
then
would
they-
buy them.
Usually people look at me like, I'm like, so that's kind of grave robbing, and you're
Mhm.
okay with that.
Literal grave robbing.
I'm like, and Titanic is not bringing up anybody's body. They're bringing up historical artifacts. so that we can learn about what happened and so that we can learn about the people who were on Titanic.
Why not? Yeah, why do we excavate Pompeii? It's a mass grave technically. Why does nobody cry about that?
What I found mostly with Titanic is it's an emotional response, nothing
Exactly.
more. It's pure emotion. They have some, strange fixation with the ship, and it's.
I feel judged right now.
I'm judging you every day. And a lot of it, as good as Cameron's movie was, I blame a lot of it on Cameron's movie because, these people, they didn't fall in love with Titanic. They fell in love with Jack and Rose.
I also
And they transfer that emotional attachment to Titanic and, oh no, we got to leave it alone. And I'm like, we visit graves every day. We go to the graves of Flight 93. We go to the graves of Civil War soldiers. We still excavate Civil War areas. I mean,
but how many of them have known relatives alive today?
Plenty.
Quite a few, like Civil War.
Yeah.
I mean, I went to Appomattox with a school field trip.
But
In
how many
December.
generations away are we talking here?
No, it's irrelevant.
For me,
there's still
I'm an
people.
oddball. Even in this group right now, I'm an oddball.
Because you still have
Because I
your
never
relative.
wanted Titanic to be found. Because of what's going on now. You have people going down and bring this stuff up, which is there's nothing wrong with that. I agree. But if you're truly going to study something, why disturb it?
Because not everybody can go down like 2.5 miles.
You can see it on film. You saw what Ballard saw, right?
Yeah.
It's not the same though. You don't get the
Let's have
same.
what RMS Titanic Inc. is doing right now.
For
I'll
instance,
explain
in
this.
1989, I had dinner with one of the lawyers for the French salvage company. And he asked me, as a survivor's grandson, what I thought. And I said, I don't think it should have been touched. But I'm in the minority. Even in this group, I'm in the minority. In my own family, I'm the minority. And I'm fine with that.
All right, we've
But I
got one
do
more.
agree, some good things have come out.
That's what he's
bringing
talking
this
about,
stuff
is
up.
because
All right,
when they
let's do
started
the
bringing
next
this
slide,
stuff
then we'll
up,
come
there were
back to
still
this.
survivors alive at that time.
All right, hold on.
You know what I'm saying? When they started bringing it up, there were still survivors. And as George B. he once told me, he says, how would you like it if your family was in a car accident and they died and all their luggage was strewn across the side of the road? People went over there and started picking up all their clothes. I said, yeah, you got a point.
Can I just interject one more thing about the whole emotional thing of people being obsessed with not salvaging from Titanic? I do think that Bob is spot on, not just because we're friends, but regarding the whole movie thing. I also think a lot of it is because of Eva Hart, because I mean, I know I hate her, but just and some of it is not really her fault. It's just she's such an overexposed survivor. The way she's in pop culture, she's the default survivor. She's the one that's always being interviewed, and for some reason, people just assume like Titanic survivors are like a bee, like a wasp's nest, and have a hive mentality, and she's the queen bee, and everything she ever said, every single opinion she ever held, is what every single Titanic survivor experienced and felt. And because a few times in an interview she says she's against salvaging, people just assume that that must be every single Titanic survivor and every single Titanic victim's relative has that opinion. I've been noticing that a lot.
My grandfather wanted it salvaged. He wanted his cap gun that was in their shipping crate that held my great grandmother's sewing machine that he wasn't supposed to take with him. He's supposed to. What happened was he traded his top for this cap gun. His mother, my great grandmother, didn't like guns and made him quote unquote take it back and get his top back. But what he did was he dropped it in the shipping crate. So he always wanted that back. That's why I say I'm the only one in my family who was against the disturbance of the wreck site.
But there are so many people that I've been arguing with online that when they always think that they can win the argument by just saying Eva Hart was against it. They think it's like the big gotcha and the big win that will end the entire discussion about salvaging.
All
I,
right,
I,
so
I agree. You know, you
Yeah.
shouldn't take one person's word as
Gospel.
as
As
gospel, right?
default, like that she's the
Yeah.
default survivor that every single survivor defaults on. That she is
Yeah.
she
Right.
is every single survivor
I
personified.
don't claim that my opinion should be everybody else's or that everybody should share in my opinion. It's my opinion, and that's just what it is. You know, you can take it with a grain of salt. You got other people in this meeting tonight. You know, you know how you feel, and you may not disagree with me, and I'm fine with that. You know,
so real quick, this slide, and then we can come back in about 15 minutes to the next slide. All right, so 11:15 Titanic time, passenger Lawrence Beasley climbs into his top berth to read, where he noticed particularly the increased vibration of this ship. We kind of touched on that earlier, but that's just what's on the timeline. So there you go. Lawrence Beasley.
Fun fact, he's the
Yeah.
only person photographed on Titanic and Carpathia.
Oh, I did not realize that. How about that?
Yeah, he's using the one of the bicycles in the gymnasium, and then he's wearing
Yeah.
his dress gown, Carpathia
Yep.
with.
But to the items back, it's important to find these items because I can look into books and see pictures. I can hold a modern replica from a Titanic postcard. That's nothing, but something like this little item.
Ooh.
It's a menu card from the Lapland.
Oh.
And it's from the trip where the Titanic crew was brought back to England. This is something it speaks to you. It looks like nothing, but this speaks to you when you hold it in your hand as original. And that's the important how all the items must be saved.
Yeah.
Mm.
Now,
It's,
when is that? What time period is that one from? What
that's
year?
that's from April 20, 1912.
Wow.
Yeah, it was when the Lapland was carrying the crew back to.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Exact. That's an original, and you can think when you hold it in your hand. You can think it's possible that one of Titanic crews holds this in his hand. It's
Wow. Josh is
possible.
sitting over there like, I want one of those.
It's possible. It's
I had the
it's
opportunity to
it's-
buy
it's-
it or a similar one, and
Mm.
I kind of kick myself for not doing it, but I'm also trying not to
Josh
go
like,
on a spending spree right now.
yeah.
But yeah,
But it's the same. It's the same with this.
a
This
nice
is an
relief fund check.
That is nice.
exact. And
Just go cash it.
you know one of the relatives from one of the crew members holds this in his hand.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. And
Nice.
and that speaks to you. When you have it in your hand, it speaks to you. You can see it in a book. Looks
Mhm.
nice. But when you hold it in your hand, it speaks. And that's
Definitely.
important. That's important with all the exhibitions.
Mm-hmm.
The exhibitions, what you see is real. It speaks.
Mm-hmm.
It has to tell the story. No? And
I think
with
that's
the exhibitions today, I have it now from a friend. He has now bought some items from the Cameron movie, some from the proofs, and will show them in the exhibitions because the young people are more interested in proofs from the Titanic movie from Cameron as in originals.
oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I was once offered the plate of one of the plates from the movie. I was like, I got two real ones.
My
I was like,
friend
"Oh, I have the real stuff."
my friend owns the railing where they Rose and Jack and Rose were on when they filmed the spitting scene.
Oh, that's funny.
Very cool. He
Wonder
owns
if
the
that's his
railing
spin
now.
on it.
Mm.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny.
Yeah.
Um,
He
but-
also owns the bench they used to break up the when they let's say when they will come from the third class to the second class to go up, and they use the bench to
Oh, and
broke
that they
the
broke down the infamous Bostwick gates that didn't really
yeah,
exist.
and
Oh.
the original bench he owns now, and he
Oh,
says
fun.
he says the people are more interested in this than in original items.
Hmm.
And the guy, I mean, he owns original items a lot. He owns in deck chair and many other great things. But he say the people are more interested, the young people are more interested in the Cameron movie props.
Hmm.
Well,
That's-
I'm thinking maybe like film buffs would be more interested in the movie props, while historical enthusiasts would be more interested in the real thing.
Yeah, it really
Huh.
depends on the person because
Mhm.
I've encountered people who are into both, and honestly, I've seen exhibits. It's becoming a thing with exhibits now. And we see this with the Rene Bergeron exhibit in Chicago, where it ends with the movie props, but it has other stuff. And I'm not going to get into.
Wait a minute. Chicago?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, they have a really.
Where at?
It's still there, right?
Yeah, I
So
believe
it's
so.
What are you
touring.
talking
It
about?
was like New York a few last year. It's the tour. It's a touring version.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
I think Tom Zoller puts it on.
I don't
They have,
I don't know if
it's
it was the
mostly
same
like
one, but I remember in 2007 there was one in Denver.
they don't
Oh,
have
it's
anything from the wreck.
but
It's just
it-
like White Star
In
items
Chicago
and Olympic stuff
now?
and
Sorry, what did you say, Bruce?
You say it's in Chicago right now?
Yes.
well, it's right outside of Chicago. Dan
exhibits.
went. I'm sorry he's not here to tell you about it. We did a 401 episode where he talked about his trip and showed his stuff that he got. It was really cool.
And
It has-
I think there's an RMST exhibit not far from there too, but
I don't know if that's in Chicago.
is it Chicago?
No, I don't think they have one in Chicago right now.
I
There
could've
was
sworn
one in like
I heard
There's
that.
one
Maryland,
in
I think,
Melbourne,
but
I think, in Australia, or either
there's one
Clover.
in Australia.
And
There's
in
one
Columbus,
in
Ohio.
yeah, I think it's
Yeah,
you're
I,
right.
I just went to the one in Columbus, Ohio, and I was disappointed.
Oh, were you?
Yeah,
Yeah,
That the one
the
with that
props are
corridor,
cheaply made.
that with that corridor with the blue stuff in between panels, and it doesn't even look like Titanic's corridor. It's based on the movie.
yeah, it's one thing I'm noticing though is it's becoming more of a thing where exhibits end with movie props because some people go for the history, but if you add, you got this thing that Kate Winslet wore, or you get the movie props and stuff, some people will go more
Just to
for
see
that,
that.
but also
Mhm.
go through for the history while they're at it, so you get both.
The other thing is, when you go to that RMS thing, a lot of what they present as artifacts or replicas,
Yeah, was
and
that
they're
David a
obviously
replica?
replicas.
Was the David a replica or was that the real one?
That
Mm,
that's what I questioned when I was in there. I
Mhm.
mean, like the one in Columbus, Ohio, I had to pay to get into COSI. Then I had to pay to get in to the exhibit.
Mhm.
For my wife and I, that was $105. And they said, "Oh, well, it takes 2.5 hours." The only reason it took me an hour was because I chatted with a Titanic researcher from Akron, Ohio. Because there really wasn't, there was like maybe 5 genuine articles that you could tell were genuine. And the rest looked like copies. really.
Like I was kind of disappointed when we went to Vegas and like the cherub was a replica and
because
not
the real
real.
one's in Florida. I think I did say the real one. Some better than you.
I look at the moment for something, but I find something other. This
Oh,
is an original signature from William Alden Smith.
oh,
Mhm.
nice. Very
Very
nice.
nice.
You've got the coolest stuff.
Yeah, you
I
have
didn't bring
nothing.
anything with me tonight because I don't know. I show my stuff off all the
Wait,
The
time.
only thing like that I have is I actually have a letter from Walter Lord.
Oh, do
Yeah,
you?
I
Nice.
have his book in the first edition
I
signed
have to
by
find
him.
it before August so I can bring it down to the Pigeon Forge this
You
year.
do need to bring that. Well, all I have with me is I have a necklace with Titanic rust in it. It's like bollard rust.
And I have this.
I do have a piece of
this
coal
him on
from
the tip on
Titanic.
me.
Do you? I have some coal too. I love my coal. I have a
I've got a-
necklace with coal in it too.
I've
but
got a
tonight I'm
few
wearing
pieces behind me, but it would take too long to go through.
Gosh, like I got
Yeah.
some stuff too. A little bit.
I got a few
Yeah, I
knickknacks.
saw what you were posting.
Yeah, they can go see that.
The silk postcard just to taunt me. It's okay.
Oh yeah.
Which postcard?
That postcard right there.
Yeah, there was one I saw for the Olympic I was tempted to buy, but it wasn't posted, so it just kind of felt to get
Why
it.
does that matter? I
doesn't
prefer
matter.
postcards not posted. And
Why?
Ed,
You're
you
gonna
like the
post them?
postcards that are posted.
I just
I
like
like
the
it.
My
pictures.
piece
I
of
love the
coal.
postmark.
Look at Michael's stuff. That's really cool. I like it.
So I
a
found
lot.
what I'm
Very
looking
nice.
for. About the history of the ships, the Carpathia, after the rescue mission, was so popular. There were on fun fairs, I know minimum 2 photographers, where you can make photos where you stand on board the Carpathia.
Oh, they had
That-
like souvenir
They-
like photos.
Yeah,
with the
yeah,
Carpathia?
you get them as postcards. They look. Wait a moment, I must
We lost
rip
Bob.
it
Have you ever
out.
seen have you ever seen a
That- That's one of the postcards.
Oh,
You can get there and photograph on board the Carpathia.
So wait,
This-
were they actually in the Carpathia, or you could like the early version of they Photoshop you into Carpathia?
No, they made an background painted.
It's like a
Oh.
mock-up, like what the museums have, where you can stand on the
Oh, so
Titanic's
it's like
bow.
the-
and
And
it
it's
looks like-
a really weird looking
Yeah.
jet.
yeah.
The funny thing is, from each exists only one from each photo. And I know people, 3 or 5 people, who owns 1 or 2 of these postcards because they are really rare. Only to show that the first 4, the next 4, the next ones 4 again, and I have over 20 in the meantime. And all other, I know the one who has the most has 2 of them. And I, in the meantime,
Just so
have
you
over
know,
20.
in 10 minutes, the Titanic will strike the iceberg.
Mm-hmm.
mhm. All right. So I do have another slide to show. It's time to go back to that. All right. So the next slide is 11 Titanic time. You should hear the bells. So 11:30 Titanic time, lights in the lounges are extinguished. Passenger Edith Rosenbaum in the reading and writing room on A deck is told lights out, it's 11:30 by a steward. She takes 2 books and walks ahead to her cabin, A11 forward, turns on the light and prepares to turn in. She was just a small child though, when this happened, but that was anyway.
No, she was an adult.
Was she an
an
adult when that
adult.
happened? I
Yeah.
thought she was younger. Well, anyway, that's her
She was-
kid.
She was
Mhm.
younger than that when that photo was taken, obviously, but
Yeah.
no, she was an adult. She was
Okay.
traveling alone, and she had like something like 27 trunks or something like that. It was crazy. She was
God.
really
Yeah,
a
but they weren't for
fashionista.
her. She was buying clothes for like.
Sounds like she packs more than I do. My husband always makes fun of me for
It
how
wasn't
much I
her.
pack when we go anywhere, even if it's just
Joanna-
for like 1
Joanna,
week.
she was buying. She was bringing back some like style samples for a store she worked for. Or something
Yeah.
like that.
She was also, I believe, she was the first female war correspondent, like writing from the trenches
Oh wow.
during World War One. So she led a remarkable life.
What happened to her pig? Is that still around or is that in a museum somewhere?
Not only is it
She gave
around,
it.
Walter
She gave
Lord.
it to Walter Lord, and then it ended up in the museum, Greenwich.
Maritime Museum.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So we were talking about like movie props in museums and stuff. I am really surprised that the Titanic Museum attraction bought the piece of molding from the Titanic movie. And it went for a lot. Did you guys see that?
817 grand.
Oh my gosh. Because I was
One?
joking around with Stefan. I don't know if he's still watching, probably not. But we were like kind of like keeping an eye on the auction and he sent that to me that it had been sold. And then I saw that and I was like, "Oh, did you buy it?" And he was like laughing. I was and we were laughing back and forth. And then I saw that the Titanic Museum attraction bought it. And I was like, "Oh dear God."
I think it's gonna draw a lot of people because it's such an iconic piece of the film. It's also a replica of an actual artifact, granted different dimensions, but it's it's based off of an actual piece of paneling found from the Titanic's lounge that's up in Canada.
Thorsten, hey, look what I just got something a few days ago.
Oh
It's
yeah, ocean brew from the Capacona.
Did I get it from you?
I have some from that, yeah.
Go to the White
Can
Swan
I buy this from
Hotel in Alnwick, England. They have the smoking lounge from the
They have
Olympic.
they have the passenger, the first class lounge, like 90% of it as the restaurant,
Let Michael say it.
Yeah.
I want to go there.
By the way,
someday.
by the way, when I read
These are things I found out through researching my trip.
Are you gonna go there? Michael, are you gonna go?
I haven't decided whether we go up the east or west coast, but because we're going to travel by train from Southampton up to Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to finish our trip in Belfast at the Titanic Hotel.
Nice.
Very nice.
So if we go up the east coast, we'll get off at Newcastle, which isn't far from Alnwick, and go to the White Swan Hotel. Although, from what I understand, it's not that great of a place to stay.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to kind of have to stay there to see what you want.
Yeah, I would stay there.
I loved it. It was a great place. I loved it very much.
Did you?
Why is it not good? I looked at their rooms. They look pretty nice. Is it the service?
You know,
it's an old place.
I've been doing research to find out. We're going to be in the UK for a week. So I've been watching lots of YouTube videos. One guy that I found stayed there. He said, "Oh, it's not that great. Stay at an Airbnb and then go and visit the place." But I'm not going to spend. If I'm going to go there, I'm going to spend the night in the hotel. That way, I know I have access to that area. Because another guy who went there to see that, they denied him access because he wasn't a guest of the hotel.
Oh.
By the way, the last slide reminds me there was she grabbed 2 books or so. She reminds me in the Titanic's library, we only know 1 book which stand in there because I mean it was Gracie who rent it from the library and bring it back, and that was the Old Dominion from Mary Johnston.
There's also, I believe there was a first or second edition Sherlock Holmes.
Oh.
There was a group of people. There was a group of, I think it was Frenchmen who were there playing cards. And I remember reading about a first edition Sherlock Holmes on there.
Oh wow.
Yeah, the funny thing, I spent a lot of money because I must have the Old Dominion from Mary Johnston, and now I own a first edition from 1911 that must exactly be the same that must in the library from the Titanic.
I do have a White Star book. This is a 1914, I want to say. A Song of Songs by Kipling. You can see the White Star line on the binding.
Yeah.
Very thick binding, obviously meant for, a lot of use, bad weather, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Now, do you know what the most popular book on Andrea Dora was?
A Night to Remember.
A Night to Remember.
Night to Remember, that's right.
So is the library accessible now? Did I hear that? Or I mean, as the wreck is deteriorating, more spaces are becoming accessible that weren't before. Is that one of them, do you guys think? The library? Or did I?
You talking about the library in the lounge?
Yeah.
I'd imagine it's not accessible now.
Oh. Okay.
One more thing. just so
What's
you
that?
know, Don Litch can't be here tonight because he is out at Long Beach, California on the Queen Mary.
And he's
Well,
doing
I
a
think
live
Yeah.
stream with Honor and Glory.
well,
No,
I
With the
think
not
we're
book
Sea of
having
club.
more
Glass.
fun
Yeah.
than they are anyway, so it's
Well, they
okay.
don't
I'm
have me
glad you
there, so
guys are
they're
here.
missing out.
By
Yeah.
by the way, this is original Olympic wood from the
Oh,
Marquis of Granby.
Mm.
all right. Well, so we're getting down to close to the
Dang.
collision time. So I wonder what they're thinking. They're just kind of hanging out in the crow's nest. The officers are on the bridge. It's cold. But they, you know, right now everything is just kind of clear. Um, this is just the last moment of calm for them. The passengers are either asleep or they're just doing something calmly somewhere. Some are playing cards. Some are, what else would they be doing right now? What do you guys think?
Imagine this.
What?
Imagine
Oh.
Hitchens is at the wheel in a
Mhm.
completely dark wheelhouse. Only light that he sees is the light from the course board. You don't want to ruin the night eyes.
Mhm.
The front windows are shuttered, but this guy is steering the wheel based on a compass heading. Typical, trying to keep yourself. Turn the heater up in the wheelhouse, of course, by adjusting the steam because there was steam heat in there. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you hear these 3 rings of the bell. And Murdoch runs into the wheelhouse, goes to the telephone, and says, "What did you see?" "Iceberg straight ahead, sir." At the same time that the bell's being rung. Now, he then turns around, and according to the testimony, he hits the electrical switch for the lower watertight doors. And he orders what? Hard to starboard, maybe before the watertight doors. Then Smith comes out and says, "What have you struck?" Right? Am I getting that right?
Mhm.
It's now 10:38. Just sorry. Just wanted to mention it is now
Not
10:38.
quite yet.
All right, so we're gonna read the next slide.
Which you were basically describing it in the almost in real time of how that happened 112 years ago exactly.
Yep. Collision with the iceberg. Location approximately 41 degrees, 45.5 north, 49 degrees, 55 west, Boxhall abreast captain's quarters, walking towards the bridge. Quartermaster Oliver steps onto the bridge and sees First Officer Murdoch at the watertight door switch. He also sees the peak of the iceberg pass. Did I miss something? Hold on. Oh no, I missed 11:49. Hold on. Okay, I did skip one. Quartermaster Hitchens. All went along very well until about 20 minutes to 12, when 3 gongs came from the lookout, and immediately afterwards a report on the telephone. Iceberg right ahead. He, Mr. Murdoch, rushed to the engines. I heard the telegraph bell ring. Also give the order hard to starboard. Upon hearing the lookout bells, Quartermaster Oliver leaves the compass platform for the bridge. Barrett in boiler room 6 hears the boiler room telegraph bell ring and sees the red light come on. The illuminated telegraph indicating stop just moments before collision. He and second engineer Hesketh call out to shut the dampers. Ship's head starts to swing over to port as the tiller is now hard over to starboard. Collision with the iceberg. Location approximately 41 degrees, 45.5 north, 49.55 west. Boxhall abreast captain's quarters, walking towards the bridge. Quartermaster Oliver steps onto the bridge and sees First Officer Murdoch at the watertight door switch. He also sees the peak of the iceberg past the bridge and hears Murdoch call hard to port. Fourth Officer Boxhall steps onto the bridge in time to see Murdoch, still about the watertight door switch. Leading fireman Barrett sees water pouring in 2 feet above the stokehold plates in boiler room 6. Number 10 stokehold, and jumps through the watertight door into boiler room 5 with second engineer Hesketh just seconds before it closed. He then notices water coming into the empty starboard side forward bunker of boiler room 5. Coal falls all around Trimmer George Cavill into the aft bunker of Boiler Room 4, and immediately he starts to dig himself out. Captain Smith comes through the wheelhouse onto the bridge and asks Murdoch, "What have we struck?" Murdoch replies, "An iceberg, sir." Smith tells him to close the watertight doors, and Murdoch says, "They are already closed, sir." And that's 11:40 p.m. Titanic time.
And not to forget, Jack and Rose had ended her sex.
Well, that's in like an alternate reality.
Yeah.
So that is collision with the iceberg. And we kind of all know what happens next. That's put into motion, an unstoppable chain of events. It's just kind of, all downhill from there. Despite all of their best efforts, Titanic will sink at approximately 2:20 a.m. on the 15th, taking with it 1,496 passenger and crew. We go through this every year. I think that those of us who have been interested in Titanic for so long, who have studied it, and feel just such a deep connection to this event in history, and who know people such as Michael, and we just feel such a deep respect for the family members and the descendants. We realize this event sent such a ripple throughout history and affected so many different people. And I think that's why we do take this time out every year to just pause and to reflect on this, and to just commemorate this event. It's not because I want attention. It's not because I want any kind of notice for this. I just want to preserve the moment in history. I want to I want to pass this on to the next generation as well. I want others to continue to learn about history, and to continue to pause and reflect on how this changed many, many lives, and how human error and arrogance can cause this kind of tragedy. So I guess that's what we're doing here tonight. So I just want to thank everybody who's taken the time out to listen to us go through this timeline, and to analyze, and to talk about it, and to remember these people in this event. I want to thank Bruce and Steve and Thorsten and Josh and Ev and Michael. I want to thank our viewers. Anything else you guys want to add? We'll start with Bruce. Bruce, you want to add anything?
Well, yeah, I agree with everything you say. One of the other part of this whole thing about the Titanic and what keeps this thing alive, I had somebody approach me when I was at the BTS in 2017. Most of you may or may not know that Steve and I were involved with the Chinese Titanic 2 project in China.
Romanticy?
And what's that?
The Romanticy one?
I didn't hear you.
The one that was going to be just a floating hotel attraction.
Yes. Yeah, I was in charge of that. Steve and I were on that. Anyways, the BTS daughter of one of the survivors to come to me, and she said, I really don't appreciate that the Chinese are making money off of this tragedy, And I said to her, I go, do you mind that James Cameron made money off of his movie? Or that I'm making money from this because I'm an advisor? And she says, no. I go, well, I'm making money off of a tragedy. But let me say this to you. And I told this, I forget her name, and I'm sorry. I said, but I promise you this, that anything that we do, anything I'm involved involved with will also include education. And there was supposedly there was going to be a hell of a museum, which we had planned for this project in China. And I said, I want you and other survivors' children to partake in that. I mean, I was going to fly her out to China. I'm telling you. But I said to her through this, I said, well, look at it like this, though. Imagine all these people that would probably be forgotten about if it wasn't for the Titanic enthusiast. I mean, you know, I've got relatives who I remember who are dead, and nobody knows who they are except for me and my mother. But you get this little Swedish kid or whatever they found the grave who was buried there, and he is now engraved into history now because of Titanic. You know? And it's a shame, you know, it's sad how they went, but you know what? The memory is living on, and it will for who knows how long. And I find that to be an honor. You know, one of the reasons why I wrote Titanic, the Ship Magnificent, Volume 1 and 2, is because I know that when I die, nobody will know who the hell I am, and nobody will care. But if I write these books and I put my name on there, and 100 years from now, when somebody wants to learn about Titanic, they're going to go to the library and they're going to find this dusty book in the back, and they're going to say, "Who the hell was this guy, Bruce Beveridge?" That was what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Or Steve Hall, or our producer, Scott Andrews. You know, so through all the tragedy of it all, I think about the little Swedish kid. I forget what his name is. When they discovered his identity up in Halifax, I go, "How great is that?"
Yeah.
I go, "Huh?" Nobody would have known who that poor little kid is.
Sidney Goodwin.
Until now. Yeah. But nobody would have known who that poor little kid is.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for Titanic, he would have been forgotten. I think that's kind of neat. That's all. So I just find that it hits me in the heart. That's all I got to say about that. It keeps the memory of those people alive.
Mm-hmm.
As every generation goes on, who in the hell is John Astor? Nobody knows who that is. And he was a famous one, you know, or any of these people. I mean, but now they are going to be remembered for who knows how long, you know, until it's, you know, until they whatever. But you know what I'm saying by that? So, you know, that's a legacy. It's a legacy of Titanic.
Although even before they knew his identity, what I really found touching about Sidney Goodwin is that he was at first, they were just going to bury him at sea with a lot of other third class and crew. But the crew were so upset when they found him. They were so devastated that they saved the body and they paid their own money to get him a proper burial.
Yep. Well, even Vincent Astor, when he came to collect his father's body, offered to pay for the burial of Sidney Goodwin, and the crew were like, "No, we got this." They practically adopted him. Like, if the family didn't come forward to claim him or identify him, they were going to take care of him. And they brought the Reverend Cannon, who buried the bodies at sea on the Mackie Bennett. They brought him back to officiate Sidney Goodwin's burial, and he and they laid a beautiful plaque over his body, and that's how they identified him, is that plaque preserved through connection some of his DNA. And so, yes,
he was the only child's body that they found, I think, right?
Sorry.
Wasn't he the only? I think he was the only child that they found, the body. They didn't find any other children, I think.
It depends on your definition.
They found several children, but they've only identified the one.
Yeah, it depends on your identify.
You go to Halifax.
I think there was,
and even I think
they found a sage. I think they found
in New York. There are unknown children bodies in Halifax.
Mm-hmm.
They also found one of Rhoda Abbott's children, not both of one of them.
Yeah.
From my family's perspective, my great-grandfather was lost. His body was never found. Alfred Rush's body was never found. However, Thomas Theobald's body was found and identified and returned for burial.
is that the menu from his body is on display in Pigeon Forge right now.
Yep.
Yeah, that it is a bit of a misnomer that they buried people because they buried people because at sea because they were third class and crew. That wasn't necessarily the case. If you look at it, it's because they had limited embalming fluid and limited supplies.
Yeah.
It was really
And
based on the
unlimited
condition of the body.
space.
Is it true that a lot of the first class took priority just simply because they had to settle estates?
Well,
Or is it,
the first class were easier identified than anybody else. If they identified the body, they would, other than the children they brought back, they usually brought them back for burial.
because they had the
If they
initials,
couldn't identify them, they just went back over the side.
But they even they found Chief Purser Hugh McElroy or McElroy or however you say his name, and they identified his body and everything, but he was so decomposed that they buried him at sea, and that's the case for a lot of them. It was more about the condition than it was their class.
Right.
Yeah, it's true. There wasn't a lot of people making these assumptions, And I'm going to tell you about this whole thing about locking down third class. There's only one instance in that ship where there was locked gates between third class and second class. And it wasn't to keep the third class away. It was only because there was a section of the ship that was an alternate second or third class, depending on what time of the season it was. And there was some Swedish women, I think it was, or Norwegians, that were burned over there. And they couldn't figure out how the hell to get out of their section. So they went over to this is where Cameron got the idea from when they couldn't get through that gate in that one scene from the movie. But it wasn't there to, it was only that the Bostwick gate was there only because that was like I said, an alternate second or third class. So they could arrange the rooms how they needed them, depending on how many the population they had. But none of those gates were locked. I mean, you could those little gates that were on the bulwarks coming up from the staircases from the well decks were not locked. So nobody knew how to open the damn things. There was emergency exits. Chief Baker Laughlin talks about it in his testimony. There was an emergency exit on Scotland Road. You get right into the first class staircases. Third class passed them every day, 3 times a day, back and forth for their meals. But it was never marked, and nobody told them where the hell it was at. And it's true that a lot of the crewmen also didn't believe that their ship was going to sink. But when they found out that it was, a lot of them just took off, left. So a lot of these third class, and I think it was Mike that was saying this, many of them didn't speak English. They had no idea. But even if they weren't able to follow somebody else, the other person didn't know where the hell to go. That's how a lot of that happened. But there was the thing about them dividing them up because of immigration thing. The biggest issue that this ocean liner companies had was keeping the first class out of third class. The third class didn't want to go to first class, didn't like the bastards up there, and didn't care. You had to read it many times. The first class liked to go on to third class to look at the zoo. So that was always a problem with the ocean liner officials, is how to keep
like that deleted
on
scene
the third class.
in Titanic when Rose goes to the general room looking for Jack. She kind of walks into
What's
third
that?
class. Oh, there's a deleted scene in the James Cameron movie where Rose goes looking for Jack.
And also for the third class, it really depended on their determination because the guys the people that survived, some of them, yes, they were led by third class stewards up to the boat deck, and some of them had that sort of thing going on. But you had like Olaf Sabaseth, you had Vennerstrom, you had other people who didn't give up, and they were like, we are going to find a way to survive this thing, and they did. Now some of them like really went through a lot to survive. But
yeah,
they and then I also like the story. I forget her name, but this third class passenger, just this little girl traveling with her father. Her father was a butler. Her father was like a part of the help. And so what he did was he paid attention to like the side staircases and passageways and stuff for the staff on ship. And so during the sinking, he used his knowledge of that to find his way up to the boat deck and get her onto the lifeboat.
And the
So,
Sage family made it up onto the boat deck.
They actually get sliding doors behind those panels, both the forward and aft staircase or forward staircase. We're talking about on E deck, Scotland Road, and then the second class staircase on E deck. It was hidden in the panels, but that Yopland said he went over there and he opened them up, he opened those doors up. There's nobody to show you where to go.
What
You know,
one part of the ship that I always felt was kind of for me like hundreds of years in hindsight, that the simplest way to get from third class to the boat deck is if they went up from the poop deck onto the little second class promenade on B deck, the one that was much larger in the Olympic, but it was shortened on the Titanic to create the Café Parisien and the extended restaurant. I mean, all I had to do was go over a little gate, like a waist-high gate, up the stairs into the second class.
those gates weren't locked. They weren't locked. They were set in like you would pick it up and do one of these.
Yeah, but even if they were locked,
they weren't locked.
Even if they were, it's a waist-high gate. It's easy to get over. So but most people didn't know that because we know it because we obsessively studied the ship, but they didn't know that. All they had to do was just run up that little stairs, go into that door, and 2 flights of stairs.
But nobody to tell them that was a problem.
Yeah, nobody told them.
You also had
there by themselves for the most part,
The survivors also talked about certain crew members who actually stopped them and told them they couldn't go up for a while. And there's one story where
they didn't know any better.
Yeah, there's one story where Abelseth and his crew were waiting, and he said that they finally let the women and children out to go up to the boat deck, and then much later they started to let the men go up, and a lot of them just stood back and said no because they were like, "What's the point? The boats are gone. We're gonna die anyway."
Yeah, I gotta tell you, if it was me, I would have figured something out. I would have tried. Anyways, I would have tried. Just like the very last passenger that was picked up by Officer Lowe on that piece of floating lounge board was not, as you know, Rose DeWitt Boudicca, but it was a Chinese man whose son owns a Chinese restaurant in Janesville, Wisconsin, which I used to frequent. Just saying. But anyways, anybody know that it was a Chinese guy on that board?
I did not know that.
Long.
And there was a Japanese diplomat aboard.
In second class, he escaped in the lifeboat, but he was shamed for that the rest of his life.
Yes, he was. He was ostracized in Japan because he survived when he should have done the honorable thing and died with the men.
There's also Victor Panasco, who I believe was related to the prime minister or one of the high-ranking officials of Spain.
Titanic was definitely
a microcosm.
I think Major Pushin also got some pushback in Canada for surviving.
Lightoller took out a section of his autobiography to defend Huchin.
That ship was a microcosm of many nationalities around the world. And I mean, he even had the French, the black guy and his family, LaRoche or whatever it was.
Yeah,
but there was
LaRoche, he was from Haiti. And he was studying engineering in France and married a French lady. He suffered racism. His uncle was president of Haiti and invited him back to become a math teacher. So he booked passage and they went there. His wife was pregnant. She was about to give birth. They wanted her to give birth in Haiti.
What was she pregnant? I think she was pregnant. They had 2 daughters, but I don't think she was pregnant.
Yeah, she was pregnant. She was pregnant. She had Joseph
There's
Jr.
There's also a very romanticized idea that they were booked on some French ship at first, but because children weren't allowed to dine with their parents, they didn't want to go on the ship where they'll be separated from their daughters.
No, they got transferred because of the coal strike.
Yeah, in reality, they were just transferred because of the coal strike. But it's a very romantic notion.
I mean, there was a lot of racism back then, and even on ships.
There's also the
questioning that
substantiated claim that they were trying to book first class, but because they were a black and mixed family, they were forced to take second class. I don't think that's true. I think they were just booked on second
Well,
And
you have to
and
also
never forget the time. At this time, when you are in the third class, you was thinking it's not allowed to go in the first class, so they don't do it.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
There
That
were a lot.
was
they
the,
just moved
was the
back there,
time. No, today it is nothing would be interested. They would storm all to the lifeboats. But at this time, if you were third class, you are not allowed to go in the first class, and then you don't do it.
that was the
Yeah, no one's storming first and business class on airplanes, and all that's separating them is a little curtain.
So we're trying to get the final word from everybody. Steve, what do you have to say to kind of wrap things up?
Oh, it's been interesting listening to everyone. It's a bit hard, just got sinus, that's all. So I haven't really said much, but no, I've really enjoyed listening into, what everyone has been saying. It's a lot of input. I like hearing what other people have got to say. And of course, what happens with the story, we know what happens in the next hour and a half or whatever the case is. But what I often think about is what if the ship had never been found? How would that have played out? I think about that every now and then. I know there's speculation that they probably already knew where it was, probably the French or somebody. They probably, I don't know, or they knew where it was. I'm not sure about returning back to the wreck. To be honest, salvage, I'm not seeing really the point when you've got that much already, you don't know what to do with it. And going down and surveying it, I thought that was already done 2 years ago. But that's up to them. People go down, and of course, 12 months, the tragedy of the implosion of the submersible Titan. That I think turned a lot of people off. That's just my opinion. They were just probably thinking that's like the full stop. That's the last page in the book. So and had to go back. The other thing I think about every now and then only too is the lack of photographs and video or film of the ship. I don't think there's any more film than the film that we already have, which was in 3rd of February in 1912. And whether the launch was filmed or not, I just get a funny feeling that we've really gone as far as we can with it all. And what we do now is we talk about it. And I think that's a good thing to talk about it. I don't know whether there's any great thing to find out about it anymore. I think you talked about tonight how it broke in half and maybe a piece was still stuck on draft. I think that's how it went down, And were they going too fast? 22 knots is not fast, is it? So it was just a freak accident to a point, and it just happened with tragic consequences, really. So,
Nobody could imagine that a giant ship would sideswipe a chunk of sedimentary rock. It was
well,
just
what's the chance of that happening, Ev? And it did happen. And I don't know, maybe somebody like Sam Halpern, whether he's run the numbers or not to see if they'd turn 15 seconds earlier, would they have missed it? I would imagine, if you had another 15, 20 seconds turned earlier, you probably would have missed it. But on the other side of the coin, they just threw the rudder back over to try and pull the tail out so it didn't get hit at the back. So, but you're going to run into that ice field anyway. It was probably only a few kilometers further off anyway. They would have had to have stopped the night anyway. And the other thing that just comes back, the continuous speculation about the Californian, how far away it was. You speculate till the chooks come home. It was stopped. And it didn't come down, and that's the end of it. And then the other controversy was the Californian, the Carpathia, and how fast or how quickly it got to the SOS position. I like the Carpathia. I think, it'd be nice to see them dive. I think they know where the wreck is. Go and dive on that, have a look there. And that Titanic, I just think it's, I don't know. I think I've said to Bruce and I've said to a lot of other people, If you want Titanic, just build another one. That's it. You've got enough information to build another one, but where do you build it? I don't know. Maybe you could build one in China. I don't really know. I've got no idea. Maybe you can build one over in, Italy or something. I don't really know. But how many people are interested in Titanic? To the extent that we are, I don't really know. Really, I'm not sure. So we all like it. I like looking at the photos and bits and pieces. See what happens. But anyway, it's been enjoyable listening in. Joe, done a good job.
I still meet little kids, 5, 7, 10-year-old kids that are enthralled with it. I'm still signing them copies of the books. The little kids, I don't even have any copies for myself of the new book. I signed them all away. So there's generations just keep growing, and it's amazing how this, I call them little kids, right, are interested in this. I think it's great,
Well, I got no books left either, Bruce. I mean, I just did with the other. What's that other one? Titanic 50 Objects or something, whatever it is. I got none of them left. And what was the other one? Done the colouring in book or something? I got none of them. I gave them all away.
I guess you guys need to write a new one.
And Titanic, I got a couple copies in there. Titanic in photographs. It's Sam Halpin's book, which is great. I like that one. I like the cover on it.
Nice. Thorsten, do you have anything else you want to say?
I only say all who watched us today, all here, use the day, remember the 1,496 people who died 112 years ago, and also the 5 people who died last year. That's what we should do all now.
Yeah, that's I agree. Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Michael, what do you have to say?
The one thing there's two things I thoroughly like about the Cameron movie. Is one, it got people interested in talking about Titanic again. The second thing is, if you know the story, which we all do, the background scenes were incredible. Other than that, I think the movie was trash. But that's my opinion. But tonight was really cool for me. I'm glad that I asked to be a part of this.
Me too.
Because I've never met Bruce and Steve before, and never met Thorsten before. I hope I pronounced that right. So it's interesting to hear these things from researchers, because I'm not a researcher. I just grew up with a story, and what I grew up with isn't matching what people were telling me. But that's a whole nother animal, because people say, "Oh, your grandpa was in class level C," but he always said class level D. So I don't know who is right, and I don't have any proof. So I'm not even going to get into that argument. But it's incredible to have this opportunity to share my family's point of view or story rather, because I'm at odds with my family about certain things about the story. But it is what it is. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that's very nice.
I'm glad to meet you too, Michael. And I have a friend of mine who's a real big Titanic historian, goes back many, many years, named Bill Young. And I hope he's listening. But he wanted to sign in and talk to you. I guess he knew your father or grandfather probably from a convention from the early 70s with the THS. But he was as soon as he heard about it, you were going to be on this show. He said he was going to sign on. I don't know. I'll talk to him tomorrow. I guess I'll find out.
If he wants to talk to me, let Joanna know, and I'll share my phone number and whatnot. I'd be more than happy to talk with you.
Or we could set up another show. I'm just
or
saying.
even a Zoom call.
All right, Josh, what are your final thoughts.
Just that it amazes me to think about how 112 years ago, 112 years later, we still talk about it. Like there's a lot of things in history that are around that or over that amount of time passed, and we don't have near as much scrutiny about those events as Titanic. I mean,
9/11 happened only 24, almost, 24 years ago, and we don't talk about it anywhere nearly as much as we talk about
yeah,
it.
I mean, and there's been a lot of things that have traumatized the world, traumatized the nations, and there have been things that, there are, of course, those historians who research all that, but with Titanic, it just catches the world and captures the attention in a way that very few events do. I'm curious how long this will last. I'd imagine I won't see the end of it in my time. But yeah,
We'll talk about how the type is dying down, nobody's going to remember it, and then something else happens and everybody remembers it.
oh yeah, and so it's just something that I'm excited to see where Titanic takes us in the future. So far, it's become such a big part of my life that it's taken me all kinds of places. It's allowed me to meet so many people, including the people here. And so it's just an amazing thing. And I'm just enjoying the ride. And I'm grateful to what happened I'm grateful to the historians who came before me. And I also have on my mind some of the stories, the people who experienced it, because it was a traumatic event and it was a horrible event for them. And there are some stories that just will bring tears to my eyes, and I'm not really a crier. So
Yeah, I know. Me too, man. I agree with that. Me too. It's funny because the Chinese don't look at it. They look at the Titanic story optimistically rather than pessimistic, like we do in the West about the tragedy and the. But they kept asking me, can you give us some examples of the humanity that was expressed? And I'm like, man, you're gonna have a hard time finding some of that. I mean, I could try to think up some stuff, but Thomas Andrews. But they were really enthralled with um, the Macy's co-founder and his wife, and they thought that there was the Titanic was a story of this great humanity, people going out of their way to save other people and all this and that. And I said, well, I got to tell you, they're going to be kind of hard to find, but we were going to be able to come up with something. It was incredible to look at it differently, completely on the other side. They said they're optimistic about it. And it's very, I don't want to get into the Chinese thing. I'll just say this, that it is really a shame that didn't come through to fruition, because what they've had planned over there would have been just absolutely incredible.
Is it still rusting?
Of,
Like the part that they have built, is it still rusting there? Or is there any chance?
I know it is, yeah.
Just rusted.
They don't have any funding, They don't have any funding. They lost the funding. And the bank had to take it over, and it was a Chinese government-run bank. And the Chinese government said to them, why are we building this icon of Western historical, this icon of Western history, and right in the middle of China? Well, that's because the movie came out. It was very, very popular in China. I mean, big. But now, that movie's going on 30 years. How long has it been? So it's starting to die off now. But if they would have completed that, it would have. I mean, the man that was in charge of that, Mr. Su, had a vision, and he wanted to invite Westerners, people to be involved with this. We even created a berths on E-deck for student workers to come in, like if you were on your break from college. They would have. It was a big thing, and it was just a shame that it all fell apart. But we talk about another book, and I think there was one more book that I was going to probably try to write. I passed it through the publisher. They weren't too happy with it, unless I wrote some of it first. But the Chinese insisted that we have a Hollywood set director as one of the work with us. and I did it. We had Curtis Schnell, and you ought to see the drawing, AutoCAD stuff that we put together for their ship fitters to put into their ship, because the rooms weren't all the same size as the actual ship. It was not 100% accurate reproduction. It was a lot. It was misshaped, everything else. But I have so many AutoCAD files of stuff that you just wouldn't believe. And what am I going to do with it? I have to get permission from the Chinese, but I want to publish that. And it won't be the story about the building, but it'll be the story about me and creating what would have been this Titanic too. But we have drawings like you wouldn't believe, and all the way down to the details of cross sections of the crown molding and so forth. And I hate to see all that go to waste. I want to put it in a book. That's what I want to do.
It's such a shame that it didn't, come to be, because I remember the show that we did, and just the things that I saw, I was like, wow, this would have been just amazing. It's a shame that, it didn't.
And I had to pull teeth just to show you what I did. I was limited to 10 drawings, and that's all they let me do. I mean, I've got sheets and sheets. I mean, of the stuff we created. The first class dining salon, the first class smoke room, all done in AutoCAD.
It's just really neat.
Talk about the White Swan. My team went over there and photographed that extensively with Hollywood set director personnel, all the scale, every one of the panels, just so it can be redrawn into AutoCAD. I don't want to see it go to waste. I want to put it in a book. Is what I want to do.
I mean, just that promo for it was really quite something. The animated kind of promo that we looked at. That was just neat. All right, Ev, what are your final thoughts? All right, let's keep it under like 20 minutes.
Probably the same as everybody else's. I think it's, we joke about it, we make memes, but at the end of the day, we should not forget that 1,496 people plus 5 more last year died. And I'm not, obviously we'll continue making memes, joking, but we still need to remember about the human factor, the souls that were lost, and at the end of the day, it's a big tragedy, and some of the way that I've seen humanity react, especially after what happened last year, I felt that we still have a long way to go trying to understand what happened on April 5th, 2:20 a.m. April 15th. And that's just, I think Titanic will still needs to be, I know it's a cliche, but it is a good moral lesson in humanity. And once again, from what I've been seeing regarding the Titan implosion and what's been going on in some other places, I don't think humanity should continue learning and Titanic is such a good microcosm of tragedy and trauma, and how people can put the pieces back together. That's about all I can say.
Yeah, in some ways, in a lot of ways, I agree with that. Especially the week of the Titan tragedy, I was doing some research and I came across the story of Ernst Denbaum, and he came to Sweden as a White Star agent to get people to book third class on Titanic, to recruit immigrants. And he recruited his wife's family and his sister-in-law, her husband, and their, I think, 4 or 5 children. And he was on board with his wife and their kid, I think it was like 4 months old. And then sister-in-law, family, and then several other Swedes that he recruited. And they were all on Titanic. 2 young girls survived who were not related to them. The rest of them all gone. And the mother died very bitter against the White Star Line and the Titanic several years later. And I just, going through the Titan tragedy and then researching that, I just found myself really understanding what the families went through a whole lot better. Yeah. the unbelievableness of it.
Well, how it is.
Yeah, I think that's totally understandable. I guess I need to say something. I don't understand sometimes, what draws us to this kind of tragedy, especially when, we don't really have somebody who is involved in it ourselves. All I know is that when I was 6 years old, I became just very, very interested in the Titanic. Um, that was I saw like just a little bit of Raise the Titanic, which is like one of the most god awful movies ever. I've seen it as an adult. I'm like, "Ooh, this is just not good."
That was a classic.
People.
But it was something about the ship coming up out of the water. I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And then, like any 6-year-old, I asked my parents like a million questions, like, what is this Titanic thing? And they answered as best they could, yeah, it was a real ship, like to leave us alone. And then that was the same year that the wreck was discovered. And so that was just it for me. I was like, oh, this is just really interesting. So for many years, I was interested in Titanics and dinosaurs. I know that's very strange. And then the dinosaur
Right, there's
interest.
no dinosaurs on Titanic movies. You should write one.
So
that would be
if you get research history, might as well start at the beginning, right?
Yeah, right. So and then, the dinosaur thing kind of faded away, but I was always still really interested in Titanic. And I started collecting Titanic books as a little girl, and I begged my mom to take me to the library so I could like check out more Titanic books. And they would the library I went to would let us check out VHS tapes. That's how old I am. Um, so just as a young child, I was always just very, very interested in Titanic. I don't know.
I'm laughing at Bruce's reaction.
You would look even older if you said we were allowed to check out CED discs. That was funny in my head.
Well,
some of
like
us remember
VHS
real
outdates
tape.
CDs, doesn't it?
No. CED was one of the early like disc like how to playing movies on discs. It was like in
You had
77.
VHS and you had discs that were about the size of a LP record.
And they
I
worked
remember
like
checking out
LP.
records and stuff too from the library. So
Well, they had two different kinds. So they had one kind that was like a cassette.
yeah.
And so it was like putting the album cover into your player.
Yeah,
And they had the other kind
the player
like
sucked out the disc and read it by a needle. It actually worked pretty much like a vinyl. And it kind of got lost in the chaos with laser discs. People confused the format for laser disc and it kind of just fizzled out.
Well, anywho,
Yeah,
so I checked out like every VHS tape I could on the Titanic.
In my collection.
And I remember reading like Don Lynch's books, and I read well, I bought A Night to Remember from Scholastic Book Club, and I bought from Scholastic Book Club and stuff like that, and from school, and I was just very, very interested in it. And everybody's like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, oh. And like for my term paper in high school, I wrote it about the Titanic, and I still have it. It's like
first book I ever bought from the Scholastic Book Fair was the Titanic Crossing.
Oh yeah, I brought like some kind of.
I wrote a paper on Titanic in 10th grade and got a low grade on it because I didn't go over the 1,500 words to go into depth about the Titanic.
I got an
So
A.
I got a B instead of an A.
Oh yeah, can't. I don't know if y'all can see it. I got an A, and y'all, it's like typed on a typewriter. It's like typed on a typewriter, like for real.
If I ever come across anything from my school days, I get PTSD.
And I had an extra like Nat Geo magazine, so I like cut some of the pictures out of my extra Nat Geo magazine and put them in my little term paper. This is like 11th grade, y'all, because we didn't have computers. I'm again that old. Now 12th grade,
We didn't have a typewriter. I had to handwrite mine.
I hand wrote my rough draft. And then I got to use an actual typewriter to write the final draft. But anyway, so I mean, this is how long I've been into this. And I cannot explain it. And I think most people you know, who are interested in it can't explain it. And so for the longest time I thought that I was the only one that was like that weird and interested in it until I met you people. And, you know, now I feel like I actually fit in somewhere. And I appreciate that.
Fitting
So,
quite well.
huh?
You're fitting quite well, mate.
I mean,
And
I'm not saying it's.
I'm
not
not just
saying
think it's great that you like it.
but it's a cult.
It's not a
But-
cult.
Yeah,
But I feel like I fit in somewhere. So I feel like
Yeah.
like somehow Titanic is I don't know. It was full of people from all different walks of life and all different, you know, classes in 1912. And I feel like today it's kind of brought together, you know, through social media and through people's common interest, you know, people from all over the world and all different walks of life. And I feel like I'm in a unique position to where I can, you know, take the knowledge that I have and, you know, keep this information going for the next generation. And, you know, through this platform, you know, still continue to, you know, preserve history and, you know, help bring people together, you know, so that, you know, who have the same interests that I do. And I think that's great. And, you know, I can help keep people's memory alive. And that's what I really want to do. So I want to thank you guys for helping me to be able to do that. So thank you very much.
Listen, I just want to mention old things in my collection because now I've had to move now 4 times. When I first started doing my research, I wrote to Woods Hole, and I have 4 or 5 VHS tapes sent to me from Woods Hole with their label on it of Bob Ballard's some of his footage from both the 85 and 86 times. And I still have those. I was going to put them on eBay. They don't have any use for them anymore, but they're quite cool. As well as the video that Roy Mangano made. I don't know if you guys know that name, but he was very integral when it came to Titanic research because he's the one that actually figured out that Titanic broke up from the bottom up. That was him. He's the one that created it. That was his study. He got the Marines forensics. Yeah, Roy.
Yeah.
But I have his videotape. I loved him. He was a great guy. He had a video on how to make a wreck model, and he had this 1/350 mini crafts, you know. Because if you ever knew Roy, he was a very funny guy. Because we're going to start off with this model, making the wreck model. We're going to show you. First thing we're going to do is we're going to break it in half. He breaks it over his knee, you know. But I have that videotape of him making that wreck model because I think this was like the very first one that was widely known. A lot of them since then are wonderful, but his was the first. And he got all of his information from Woods Hole, and I went to Woods Hole myself, so I'm gonna probably put those on eBay or something. I don't know.
And
Just saying.
And I love you. I love all of you guys.
Brought up models. This one is 4 feet
Still working on that
long.
one.
I haven't even started on it.
Hang on, sorry. I love you all guys. It was a great stream. I do have to run. I have to take my puppy to my mom's house because we have joint custody.
And I have to go too because I've got work tomorrow, but this has been absolutely fantastic. I really appreciate all of you joining in tonight. And I appreciate all of our viewers. Thank you so much for hanging in with us. Thank you, thank you. And I look forward to seeing all of you again. We'll have to do this again. Thank you guys for joining in. Thank you, Bruce and Steve and Thorsten and Michael and Josh. I think Ev, who's already had to leave, and Bob, who had to leave. But thanks, you guys. A big shout out to Dan. Hope you feel better. And we'll be back on the 401 again soon. But thanks again. All right.
All right, no problem.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. See you again soon. Thanks,
You
everybody.
guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.